Okay. Right. So I'm Elynard Edwards from Nottingham Trent University in the UK. I'm really delighted to welcome you here to the India International Centre for today's event, which is Sustaining Cultural Heritage in Local Environments. And we've got some great speakers from far and wide. We've got some first-time speakers as well, so we'll give those people our support. I just thought that it would be helpful for you to know a little bit about why this symposium has come about today. So it's actually part of a 3-year project that's funded by the British Academy in the UK. So it's under a scheme called the International Partnership and Mobility Scheme. And the partnership that I'm in, we secured an award to do 3 years' work looking at the management of cultural heritage in India, focusing particularly on the craft sector. So I'll just move on a slide. So this is our sponsor, the British Academy in the UK, which is one of the leading research agencies that funds research into humanities and social sciences. And the overall project is a larger project which has run for 3 years, which looked at the idea of sustainability, not simply in terms of environmental sustainability, but cultural sustainability and how it was expressed in particular local environments. And our ambition as this project has developed is really to offer up for discussion our findings, and also just to create sort of fora for people to discuss the solutions that they've come across or that they've experienced perhaps in their working situation. And we've also tried to be in touch with a wide range of agents in that respect. So today we've got with us practitioners from Gujarat, we've got educators, we've got people from museums, we've got people in the retail industry. So it's a wide cross-section that we've been working with and whose experience we've drawn on. And the idea, as I say, is to sort of tease out different models of practice and look for different solutions. The original research we did a short spell of field work in Kutch district, working with metal workers in Nirona cluster, so the Luha who recycle waste metals and produce decorative bells. Originally they were bells for local animal herders, but increasingly they're making bells for decorative purposes, Christmas decorations, that sort of thing, house decorations. And we also did parallel research with the block printing cluster at Damadka, Ajrakpur, and we're really fortunate today to have Abdul Jabbar Khatri from Damadka and his son Adam, who's following in his father's footsteps and is also a block printer and dyer of note. The long-term aim of the project in terms of publishing, which as an academic I'm expected to do, is we're publishing in a variety of venues. So the most immediate being the Asia Inch, the online encyclopedia of intangible cultural heritage, which is managed by the Craft Revival Trust by Ritu Sethi to my left here. So we're trying to make the material accessible as widely as possible and as easily as possible for people. So just going back to our original research partners, this were some of the members of the Luha community at Nirona and Jura that we worked with. And there will be follow-up on that. We've not got there yet. Sorry, just let me go back to that slide. Oops. And just flicking on, we shot footage. So one of our partners, Ambedkar University, in the centre slide you can see Abir Gupta, who was our filmmaker. So we produced 2 short films of block printing at Damadka, just to sort of capture the practice. Again, really to enable people who had no earlier contact with block printing and the use of natural dyes, you know, actually what it took to produce a piece of cloth by those methods. And so that was the first year. It was chiefly about field research. In the second year, we did a series of events in the UK at Nottingham Trent University, where I'm based, and my colleague Amanda Briggs-Good at the back over here oversaw some of these events in the textiles department at the university. So, sorry, this is a bit wild. We did an exhibition which featured block prints from 3 key areas of India. So we looked at block prints in Rajasthan, Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh, so south, west and north. And we were really fortunate in that Jabba could come and join us. So we not only had his textiles hung in the gallery, we had his presence there as well in the exhibition. So this was the Bonnington Gallery where the exhibition was held, which was February through to March last year. Jabba in residence. And just to say that we, for this exhibition, got a lot of support, not just from block printers. So I worked with them sort of commissioning lengths of fabric so that we could hang the full height of the gallery just with a drop of cloth. But we had a lot of support from Anita Arora, whose label Perot you're probably familiar with. So she loaned garments to the exhibition. So we've just got a cluster of those in the slides here. Some of the fabric for Anit's garments were printed by Jabba's nephew, Sufian Khatri, and I think probably some of you know Dr. Ishmael Khatri. So it's his older son, Sufian. So he printed the block prints that Anit used in what actually was her breakthrough collection in autumn-winter 2011. We did a one-day public workshop in the gallery last March, which is unusual actually for Bonnington Gallery. So we actually had people trying out block printing just for the day in the space. So the lady on the left actually came from London to try that. She's such a textile enthusiast, quite an eager student. And it prompted a lot of interest, because I think certainly in the context in which Amanda and I work, that, you know, that natural dyes are not used and block printing is not a technology that we do much with or even know much about. So it was it was quite a revelation for a lot of the people visiting the gallery. We also did a programme of workshops at Nottingham Trent mainly for undergraduate students from textiles. We had a few students from decorative arts who were interested in textiles, and a few of the MA students joined us. And when I was putting the programme together, the staff kept saying, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." So in the end, we did a day for staff as well, which I think was well received. And again, that was led for us by Jabba, who was fantastically organised, because it was quite a complicated affair. We had to get dyes from India, we had to get the pre-prepared cloths, pre-mordanted cloths, we had to create sand beds, because we also did wax printing as well as Jabba's own style of printing. And I must say that he was so organised, and he put me to shame, so he was terrific to work with. We did a one-day symposium at Nottingham Trent. So we had guests from India attending that. So we had Jatin Bhatt, who's in the audience today. We had Ritu Sethi. We had Jabba gave a presentation at that symposium. Again, it was well received. We were trying to reach quite a diverse audience, and I think, you know, judging by the response we had to that we managed to achieve some of that ambition. So that was year 2 of the project. Now on to year 3, which we've just started. This is our opening event the Symposium. So we're backed today and sustaining cultural heritage in local environments. So I hope that just gives you a quick background of what the whole project's about. And now I'm going to put Archana on the spot and ask her to open the event for us. So I'm really delighted to introduce Archana Shah, who's probably known to many of you for her design company, Bandage. So let me get this out of the way. Yeah. Do you want me to do your slides? Okay, so, yeah.
So tiny I can barely see anybody. 1 minute, I can't see the audience, so. Is that all right? I can't see people, but I suppose it's all right, you can hear me. Yeah. Well, thank you. And well, I've been working in the crafts sector now for 30 years and more, and I'm going to share some of the experiences of working in this area. I was first introduced to traditional textiles as a student studying at the NID, the National Institute of Design, in the mid-70s. The concept of NID, India's first design school, was based on the India report by Ray and Charles Eames, and I'm sure a lot of you know, but I think it's relevant to look at it again. They traveled through India and were impressed by Indian craftsmanship, the range of hand skills that created the most aesthetic and functional products for daily use. They used the simple lota as an example, a traditional container to carry and store water, as a perfect example of functionality and beauty. Each region in the country offered a variation of the lota form. They suggested that this understanding becomes the core for developing a concept for an Indian design school. The report recommended a problem-solving design consciousness that linked learning with actual experience and suggested that the designer could become a bridge between tradition and modernity. I think we need to go back to this in our design schools, but I mean, that's another. Well, I was completely fascinated by the traditional craft skills and decided to pursue this interest after I graduated by collaborating with artisans to create fabrics for an urban market. I spent the first few years traveling around the country to study the various craft techniques, often staying with artisans' family, which allowed a close interaction where I was able to study the technique as well as hear stories about their craft tradition. I discovered that each region in India offered its own unique skills, distinctive range of textiles, color palettes, and motifs. This was an enriching journey and a great learning experience. One of the first people I contacted when I started working was Ismail Bhai Neronawala, who I had met as a student traveling around Mandvi. Mandvi had traditionally been a center for cotton bandhni production. In the 80s, when I first started interacting with Ismail Bhai, I discovered that there were very few good bandhni craftsmen left in this region. Little that was produced was of poor quality, as the local consumers were not willing to pay the price. In trying to make the product cheaper to suit the market requirements, the artisans had compromised on quality. I was able to change this through design innovation and insisting on improving the quality of dyeing and using eco-friendly dyes. Together with Ismail Bhai and his sons, without a break for over 30 years and more, we managed to create more than 80 collections using the same bandhni dot technique, adding new colors, rearranging old patterns, and in the process, developing a new design vocabulary without ever compromising on quality. I was able to persuade Ismail Bhai to educate his children, as well as teach them their ancestral craft, convincing him that craft had a bright future. Today, all his 3 sons are involved in bani production. Their education and exposure has helped them to experiment and adapt to the current market requirements and expand their business. In the mid-90s, we started a mail order catalog, a mail order business. Bani outfits were prominently featured in our catalog and were distributed all around the country for over 7 seasons. In many ways, the catalog helped build the Bandhej brand and popularize Bandhani nationwide. Bani became known as a center for, Mandvi, became known as a center for Bani production, and merchants from various towns and cities carrying copies of our catalog traveled to Mandvi to place orders. Our intervention has had a rolling effect. Bani fabrics continue to retain its charm, and the dyers of Mandvi have more work than they can handle today. Presently, over 25,000 people in Kutch earn their livelihood from tying Bani fabrics. Another enriching experience has been working with Mohammad Bhai Siddiq Bhai, a block printer in Dhamadka. I think most of you here know Mohammad Bhai, a village famous for ajrak, the printed chadars worn by the Maldari men. Jabbar is here with his son Adam and will tell us more about the ajrak print. But I'm going to share my experience, my initial experience of working with their family. Jabbar was a young boy when I first visited Dhamadka as a student with my senior Sulekha in 1977 to work on a project commissioned by the State Handicraft Board to develop a collection of block prints for their store Gurjari. We were probably among the first outsiders to have ever come to this village, Dhamadka, to collaborate, to work with a traditional craftsman to produce a collection of textiles. No one from Dhamadka had visited an urban center or interacted much with city people. So this was like not so long ago, in 77. The people of the village were very apprehensive about having 2 young, unescorted women living in their village. Luckily, Mohammad Bhai was well respected and was able to pacify the local people. At that time, the village had no electricity, so the day started at sunrise and ended with sunset. Through the day, we worked at the workshop, gathering practical knowledge about the process of dyeing and printing, and the evenings were spent hearing stories from Mohammad Bhai about their life and work. We realized that it was best to understand the technique and work within the possibilities offered by the technique without imposing our own ideas that can go against the grain of the technique. Living with Mohammad Bhai's family at Dhamadka was a great learning experience, and in many, many ways became the foundation for a lot of my future work. After graduation, I continued my association with Mohammad Bhai. I used his traditional blocks and color palettes to create new surfaces by changing the placement of the blocks to produce a range of home furnishings. There were always a few pieces that had some printing variation and could not pass my strict quality requirement. I felt it would be difficult to reject these prints and burden the artisan. Instead, I decided to cut the reject pieces into garments using the parts that were usable. I showed the collection at exhibitions at Ahmedabad and Mumbai. Encouraged by the positive response, I started regularly ordering fabrics from Mohammad Bhai, a relationship that continues till now. exposure, appreciation, and sustained regular work has transformed the lives of many in Dhamadka and Ajrakpur. Today, good quality Ajrak printing in Kutch has become synonymous with the Mohammad Bhai Siddiq family, and the quality of their work has only improved. During my recent visit to Kutch, it was very encouraging to observe that all 140 families of block printers at Ajrakpur have regular orders. Over the years of collaborating with artisans in different parts of the country, I have seen many such transformations. In my experience, if there is appreciation and a sustained market demand, many traditional skills can be revived, and the next generation artisans would continue practicing their ancestral craft. I started my clothing company Bandhej in the early 80s, soon after I graduated from NID, and in 85 opened our first retail shop in Ahmedabad. This was much before the retail boom. Bandhej was started with a vision to uphold, preserve, and sustain the precious hand skills and inherent knowledge of the indigenous artisan through collaborative design intervention. Our company, Bandhej, promotes handcrafted, sustainable fashion, offering a range of eco-friendly clothing that has an understated elegance and a contemporary appeal. Over the years, we have strived to work with artisans looking upon their skills and we've worked towards building upon their skills and knowledge by suggesting fresh design directions and providing a market for their produce. In the process, Bandhej has played a modest role in rejuvenating many traditional craft skills. Today, the large network of artisans developed over years allows us to produce what we design without the dictates of any external pressures. We sell our products through our own retail stores. This sounds wonderful, but there is a great responsibility. The most challenging task has been to constantly find new design directions for the same craft skill and to create fresh collections every season, maintaining quality as the scale expands. Seeing the financial benefits and comforts of working within their homes, most of the children of artisans we work with would want to continue this work. In many cases, I'm already working with the next generation who are more open to experimentation as they have now a wider exposure. Artisans are quick to learn, and today many young artisans connect through the internet with a wider market. Over the years, apart from weavers, printers, and dyers in different parts of the country, we also work with many women's groups who embellish the garments. I'd like to share a story of one Tayaba Banu, who I call Bhabiji. Her narrative reflects how little support, exposure, and encouragement can change the life of an artisan. Most artisans have a very good understanding and knowledge of their technique as well as inherent perception of how to create form, pattern, and layouts. These skills are passed down from generation to generation as a matter of course and almost without conscious effort. Bhabiji's husband, Mohammad Bhai, handled all our badla work. His job was to collect the work from the studio, take it home where Bhabiji would execute the order. She would mark the patterns on the fabric and distribute work in her neighborhood. After a while, I found it very difficult and frustrating to work with Mohammad Bhai as he couldn't quite understand what we required. I was keen to explain the designs directly to Bhabiji. It took a long time to convince him. He kept telling me that their women never leave their homes, not even to buy vegetables. It was a man's job to provide whatever they needed. Well, I continued to communicate with Bhabiji through Mohammad Bhai, but at one stage, I I told him that we couldn't probably work with him anymore. And under pressure, he reluctantly brought Bhabiji to the workshop. I still remember Bhabiji's first visit. She came covered in a burqa, and I could sense she was quite uncomfortable. But in the confines of our office, in my office, I suggested that maybe she could remove her burqa. She seemed quite relieved to do this and was happy to embroider a few samples using this metallic thread. Bhabiji was very receptive to my suggestions, and together we were able to create several new patterns. From that day onwards, she started coming to the office regularly to work on samples and take back material for bulk production. She's done some wonderful work and has gained self-esteem and confidence. She's now the primary bread earner of the family. Bhabiji has no formal education and could not even sign her name when she first started working with us. Today she has a PAN card number, manages more than 40 women, regularly distributing work to them and ensuring that the quality of the work is of acceptable standard, and manages the accounts. She is invested in her own workspace and has bought a flat on her name, all of her own earnings. Operating her own business has given her tremendous self-confidence. She no longer needs an escort. She now travels to Lucknow with her grandchildren to see her extended family, something she never dreamt was ever possible. I feel happy to have had the opportunity to develop partnerships with artisans, and through this association, we have learned from each other and continue to enrich our lives. I believe that most places in the world today have lost their traditional hand skills. We are fortunate. Our vast variety of craft skills are not lost. Only the craftspeople have lost their traditional patronage and therefore commercial viability. This map gives a glimpse of the vast variety of skills available. Each corner or each area in India has something unique, something special to offer. I believe artisans in India have the skills to produce textiles that we admire in museums. These skills can be repurposed to create contemporary fabrics without diluting the essence of the craft technique, which would offer a sustainable livelihood to very large numbers, next only to agriculture. We need to understand craftspeople would continue their ancestral vocation only if it is financially rewarding and they are appreciated for their labor. These valuable hand skills would continue if there's a sustained market. We need a new narrative for our handcrafted skills. Artisans need to be encouraged to feel a sense of pride in what they create. For this, we need to spread awareness and develop a new appreciative patronage. It is widely believed that the high-end luxury market is the future for handcrafted textiles. I agree that fashion has given handcrafted a lot of visibility. It is also heartening to see a lot of young designers collaborating with artisans, creating new markets for their produce. There are also a handful of very successful master craftsmen who have acquired worldwide recognition for their craft skills and have regular work. But we need to understand, all this presently sustains only a very small percentage of the artisan community, probably less than 1%. The market needs to be expanded. Over 30 million textile artisans could greatly benefit with a renewed interest in our handcrafted textiles. the time is appropriate. In the deluge of of machine-produced and concerns about the chaos created by pollution and climate change, the go-slow movement, organic and the handcrafted, eco-friendly means of production can pave the way for a healthy future. Handcrafted is a living tradition in India. We need to nurture our handcrafted skills that could offer a dignified livelihood to a very large number of artisans and preserve our cultural heritage. Thank you.
Our keynote speaker is Prableen Sabani from Fab India, so I'm delighted now to ask Prableen to take the lectern.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Over here, what we're talking about is sustaining craft heritage in local environments, and I think Archana has raised a lot of points that we will be exploring further. She's talked about markets, which is a very important part of this discussion, because if we're going to sustain craft heritage, we're going to have to find patronage for it, which is another issue that has been raised. So I'd like you to just shift your perspective from the space of individual stories, which are all very exciting in craft, to the larger perspective of craft as an established skill and manufacturing base in India. India is one of those very few countries which actually has a skill base which is just waiting to be tapped. We talk about it being second only to agriculture as far as employment opportunities are concerned. But when we look at the wider picture of where craft is today, it's a little bleak. As far as agriculture is concerned, the linkages, the market linkages are very well mapped. As far as craft is concerned, this is a very individual thing right now. We have a few government agencies, we have NGOs, we have a few private players, and we have some very important conversations that need to happen around it, given the number of people who actually find a livelihood in this. And the percentages, as Archana has already pointed out, are really very, very limited. So that was one aspect of craft as an established skill and manufacturing base that actually needs to be tapped. The other thing is about the urgent need to recognize and consolidate craft as part of our conversations when we talk about livelihood creation. Whenever there is conversations around livelihood creation and skill development, craft is actually a very small part of that conversation. If we are going to look at sustaining craft heritage in local environments, which is actually the requirement and a very important part of what we are discussing today, then definitely skill development must include craft, and craft must be given its place right in the center, because this is a ready-made manufacturing base for our country. The infrastructure which already exists is quite major here. Craft is a valued and valuable product is another area that we need to look at when we look at patronage. That is also an aspect. Earlier, craft had a very distinct patronage. Today, we are looking at consumers and customers to fulfill that space, which makes the need for market linkages all the more necessary to move the conversation out from individual examples into a larger space where we can talk about percentages, where we can talk about impact. One of the things that has led for patronage to become central is the drying up of local markets. Earlier, craft was consumed where it was created. Today, that is not the case. Today, craft is for consumption way beyond where it is created. Now, as these chains become longer and more complex, the need to understand these and to have meaningful interactions within them becomes more, because most of the craft that we see in India is created in the rural areas. The consumption happens in urban spaces, and those of us who live in India understand this huge divide between the urban and the rural. The way things are consumed in and are considered valuable in an urban space might be beyond the understanding of where these are created, which is why we need people who are absolutely committed to making these linkages and to becoming bridges here. And I will, of course, come back to Fab India, which has been one of the most successful companies when it comes to creating these linkages and to creating these bridges. Fab India loses very little in translating what is required at the urban end for the rural producer, or what the rural producer is able to create for the demands which are around the purchase patterns of consumers. So the increasingly complex chains and the craft are something that need specialization, especially the marketing of product. This is a very specialized area. And I've been doing a little bit of research, and I'm quite pleased to find that there are a number of MBA organizations which are now offering specialized courses in this, that how do you market a product which is created under a totally different and individualized, get the values of it right, and then bring it to a discerning customers. How are those stories told? How is that aspect going to happen? Creating access to market is huge. Skills exist. Can we create access to market? Can we make this valuable? We have other areas which are of great importance, which is creating a space where these things can be marketed. Now we have hearts, we have the government stepping in with a lot of, in the last 4 to 5 years, there's been a lot of awareness of this, but still a lot needs to be done. Creating a culture of conscious consumption is a very important part of what needs to actually come into play, especially in a country like India, where craft is such an important part of what is available to us. And it is not just a luxury, it is also something that can be used in our everyday lives. When I spoke to Ritu and I asked her, I said, what is it that you would like us to explore from Fab India? She says, Fab India is like a fragrance. Everybody is aware of what Fab India is, but nobody really knows the strength or the core of this organization. So I'm going to give you a little background brief on this, and I'm very pleased to see that a number of people from Fab India here. We have Charu with us, who's the director. There's Damini. There's Smita, who's done a lot, especially in connecting rural artisans to the urban market. There's a lot that has happened here. So Fab India was founded in 1960, and it's one of India's oldest homegrown brands, and it is an Indian brand. We today have 231 stores across 88 cities, and you must understand that these cities are not just your metros. These are also tier 2 and tier 3 cities where we are finding a lot of resonance happening with the product. So this is really quite exciting. We have 10 international stores, and we link immediate linkages with up to 55,000 craftspersons. When we talk about that, we're also saying that these create ancillary jobs to about 5 times the number. But this is still a drop in the ocean. That is the point over here. While Fab India is a very well-established name and does a lot, if you look at the numbers of weavers and craft and potential this very skilled manufacturing base has for this country, we understand that there is a lot that actually needs to be done over here. We work with 11 production hubs, which are spread across the country, and we are sourcing from 1/3 of the 626 districts that are, which India is divided into. So the access actually is very deep, it's very rich. Fab India is one of those companies which has one of the most exciting, to my mind, supply chains in the world today. We work with a very fractured scenario, and I think in question time, maybe we take a few questions there about how this work is done. We are working with individual artisans, we are looking at cooperatives, we are working with families, we are working with NGOs. We work with whatever is available on the ground. We actually focus on home-based work. We provide access to all these different organizations onto one of the most top-end marketing platforms in the country. What you see, the Fab India stores that you see, is actually the tip of the iceberg. For us, the supply base is actually where the excitement is. In rural India, where we are going into villages, where we are actually sourcing through our 11 production hubs and our field offices. About 4 years ago, we had actually started this whole activity of very intense engagement on the ground with artisans. The social mission is a very, very important part of our going forward. We've been experimenting with how to engage with artisans, how to invest provide all the investments which are required and which Archana has also talked about, and people will also talk about the need to put in design interventions to make the product very exciting, to create a product which is relevant to the way people live today, to create livelihoods in scenarios which are appreciative. Archana spoke about appreciation. This is a very important part of any livelihood. Livelihood is not just about wages, it's also about appreciation. So to make all this happen, there is a reach which is required, and Fab India today is providing this reach. So when the company started in 1960, and we are a commercial entity, we are a corporate, we are a for-profit organization. We have never apologized for that, because for us, profits is actually a metric which measures the rigor with which we approach our work. It gives us the opportunity to reinvest in our beliefs and in our belief systems. So when the company was started in 1960, and I'm talking about 1960, where social altruism was not part of anybody's consciousness. Nobody was talking about reporting your social impact. Nobody was talking about your bottom line, the triple bottom line. It was all about profits. So in the 1960s, we have John Bissell saying, in addition to making profits, our aim, our constant development of new hand-woven products. So we're talking innovation here. A fair, equitable, and helpful relationship with our producers, and the maintenance of quality on which our reputation rests. So we have somebody who was seeing far into the future to see how important equitable relationships are going to be going forward. And today, all dialogues are about where does what you consume come from. People want to know even where they drink coffee, where that coffee is coming from. Your contribution to the world today is through your consumption. You will change the world with the way you spend your money. And that rests with you. It's not about not consuming. It is about being conscious about where your consumption leads. And this is something that has been part of what was handed down as your central core, that we are talking about a fair and equitable relationship. And when John put this down, he was told that this is not the way of doing business. Today, 60 years later, the world has come to understand that this is the only way of doing business, especially after the last recession because of subprime issues that came. And the only way of doing business is to take your entire supply chain with you, not just the top of it. Fab India's vision is very clearly to celebrate India. If you look at the products that we bring in, these are very India-centric. We work in India with Indian products. We don't look at things in terms of just in terms of how beautiful they are. We also look at it in terms of what they say about our cultural heritage and who we are. That's an important part. As part of our mission, we actually work towards harnessing the transformative power of a well-run business. And we believe that the rigor that one brings to business is what will also carry craft forward. While our supply base is individual, very individual focused, the kind of rigor that we bring to the way we operate is major. We also believe in strengthening and supporting community of customers. And this is an important consideration. A lot of conversations around craft don't take the customer into consideration. What we need to understand today is with the patronage, it is the customer who's your patron. So you have a product and you have a patron. Your patron is your customer. So Fab India's conversations include customers. They include designers who will revitalize. They are the artisans themselves, then they're the farmers, because this is also an extension of that same footprint that we are looking at. We are looking at entrepreneurs, and we are looking at people who are inspired by India. This is very central to what we do, and it's actually part of our mission. The other thing, of course, is to delight the customer. Fab India has been a case study for a number of business schools. Harvard was one of them, IIM was another one. So one of the questions that we got asked was, which way do you face? Do you face the customer or do you face the artisan? And believe us, for us, it is a very difficult question to draw this line and say we are customer-facing or we are artisan-facing. For us, what the artisan is producing needs to find patronage with the customer, and the customer needs to understand what is being created by the artisan. The craft itself, of course, is intrinsic value, and I think this is something that all of us are absolutely agreed on. This is one area in which marketing is about authenticity. You cannot take you cannot do what people do with the marketing of a white T-shirt, With a polo pony, it has a different value. You put a little crocodile, it has a different value. Craft does not work like that. With craft, the value comes from the intrinsic quality of the craft itself, from the heritage which is imbued in it, which is why all the geographical areas that we looked at in that beautiful map are so important, because it is about a place, it is about local heritage. It is about investing in that, in creating work which moves out from there and creates livelihoods right in that local space. When we look at our product lineup, and we have garments, home, furniture, that is another introduction. We have a lot of other things which include organic foods and personal care. We believe in extending the product line so that Fab India is able to give you the entire experience of anything that you require. It is a lifestyle brand. So while central to the core is the craft, there is also the extension into the lifestyle space so that we can give you a complete offering there. Fab India's mandate is, beside the viability of creating jobs, it is also to have meaningful interactions at the artisan level. And that is going to be a very important part of our social fabric as we go forward. When we look at the front-end systems of Fab India and the processes, these are cutting edge entirely. And we've had two major investments. And the reason why I mention this, because of the rigor that goes into actually looking into a company that funds are investing in. So Fab India actually comes up on that level also. As a company, it is run as a mainstream business company. But if you look at the product and the sourcing base, it is very exciting, it's very traditional, it's very localized, it's very rooted. But if you look at the way the company is run in a very cutting-edge fashion, which makes it one of the most valuable investments for certain funds. So that is a very important way of looking at it. You're not just looking at it as craft, but you're also looking at it as maximizing all the processes so that you can create meaningful interactions at the grassroots level. The role of technology is big, and I was quite interested to hear Archana talk about the artisans also looking at technology, looking at the internet. This, in the last 4 years, we find has made a huge difference in the way people interact with each other. Technology has really gone forward. So it is not just about us interacting with, it's also getting the feedback to yourself, and technology has played a huge part in this. In the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a huge jump also in Fab India. We have made, we made a huge growth in these 4 years, and we find that this has got a lot to do with the way Indians themselves are responding to an understanding of what their country has to offer in terms of craft, in terms of a lot of other things linked to being Indian. And now this is really a very exciting space, because when we talk about creating more, creating a consciousness around what we are, around the heritage, which will allow people to live in local areas while sustaining heritage and having a livelihood issue, this is a very important thing to actually build on. The understanding of Indians of what is valuable about their own heritage and which will allow jobs to be created. The kind of support that Fab India provides is in design. Design is very big. So we have, on one level, we have promotions, which are developed. On the other hand level, we have curations, which come in with, so working within the craft idiom, while keeping it fresh, while vitalizing it, while creating the excitement going. That is a very, very specialized space that we work with. Providing regular orders, sustainability. We are not talking about environmental sustainability here alone. We are also talking about livelihood sustainability. Livelihood is a very important part. Regular orders make a very important part of that. It is not enough just to bring out one collection and then after that, after the capacity is built, have nothing else to offer there. You have to build in such a way that it is sustainable in terms of livelihood. We have on-time payments, which is very important, which is something that is required. The expanding of facilities, the ability to constantly produce. If you look at Fab India, the number of stores, we have to work very closely with our supply base to ensure that there is enough product that goes into these stores. Training is a very important part. Fab India actually has a lot of on-ground trainings that happen, especially in terms of quality. What is your understanding of quality? If you look at something as simple as a table mat, which is such an important, well, I wouldn't say important, but it's definitely one of the big selling items, because anybody who has to gift anything will finally land up gifting at some point or the other a set of table mats. But to understand that the person who is creating those table mats has A, no understanding of it, B, has no use for it, because he or she is not eating in a space where they use the table mat. The table mat is our usage. We need it to be of a certain dimension. We need it to be of a certain quality, because we're going to put it into the washing machine. So to get all these ideas across, that what is acceptable, what do we mean by quality? What is it that will sell? How will your traditional motives work on a product which actually is not part of your environment? These are conversations where you need bridge companies like Fab India to come in and have these conversations to create a market to take it forward. So when we look at Fab India's growth, we actually see a mirror growth in the artisan interactions happening. So this is something, a company which is today touching 1,000 crores over the year is also creating a parallel growth in the economy on the artisan level. Translating urban demand for rural producers becomes all the more important when you understand that this growth comes from creating desirable product that is desirable to the consumer, which is a very important understanding over here. And this is something that is very well illustrated by the Chanderi story. Chanderi, all of you are very aware of Chanderi as a town. Chanderi is in Madhya Pradesh. It is known for those beautiful gossamer saris, which found its royal patronage. But after a point, after the royalty was not buying as much anymore, it sort of fell into disuse, Chanderi, and the looms were lying vacant. So UNIDO got into a project where they were building capacity with them, sort of retaught them their skills, and then Fab India was asked to step in to actually create a market, to provide the market linkage. So you have people who have been re-skilled, but then where are those markets? Where is the product going to go? Fab India got into this and started working with creating new products that can be used. So now you have dupattas, you have saris, you also have beautiful day curtains. You have an entire festive range of tablecloth, of napkins, which use Chanderi. There's lakhs of meters of fabric that comes from Chanderi. So from place which was dying out, today we are working with close to 200 looms in Chanderi itself, with running fabric coming in from there. So this is a very important, Chanderi for us is a very important aspect of what a good market linkage can do for you. The other thing which is very important is for Fab India to engage with any cluster. It has to come up to a certain level of commercial viability, because Fab India at the end of the day is a commercial organization. How do we build that capacity? Fab India is now, as part of a social mission, going into cluster development and livelihood impact, where it will actually nurture clusters to reach that level at which it will be able to engage with Fab India as a commercial entity. So a lot of our investments going forward are going to be in this sector, using Chanderi as the model which has been very, very successful as far as creating livelihoods is concerned, and keeping your heritage local to the region where it's being created. So you have skilled craftsmen who no longer feel the need to move out for a livelihood. So the other the other thing that is very, very interesting is the number of women who work in the craft sector. This is something that the government has not focused on, and I think it really does need a huge, it needs to be highlighted, because if you look at craft, this is one of the few sectors in which women are really playing a major part. 43% of our craft buy involves women in some way or the other. So you can imagine how big that is. I was quite surprised myself when I found this number, because there is no other industry in India which actually looks or provides for women in the way craft does. So this is another area that needs to be strengthened. And when we work with our clusters, this is something that we are keeping in mind and working specifically with. So what we're looking at here again is regular work, the cluster in the cluster level. The skill-based wages is another area. So how do you pay for it, which is a very, very important part of it, because finally it is about the livelihood which is earned and which will keep people in the local neighborhoods. The design interventions are very important. They have to be within the parameter of the craft which exists in that geographical location, and yet it has to be fresh. So you have that entire, gamut of how do you work towards it. We have very, very, structured systems with which we engage with designers, and we engage with artisans to be able to find the signature, which is very easily recognizable as craft. And then, of course, technology is going to be very big going forward, because technology India is one of the few countries which has taken majorly to technology and is using it actually to make a lot of difference in the way livelihoods are going to be impacted. And this is actually a very, very exciting time for us as we move forward with the social mission very central to what we do. We are looking at revival. We've divided our interventions in three parts. One is revival, the other is to revitalize, and the third is to train, to teach. So when we look at revival, we are looking at Ujjain, where we are reviving, we are working to reviving spinning with the Ambar Charkha. With revitalizing, we are looking at, Wardha. We are looking at Chhattisgarh. We are looking at Jodhpur. We are looking at Rajasthan, which is always a huge center for us, Jaipur. We are looking at Madhya Pradesh. For teaching, this is a very, very interesting case study that we have of a place called Khurrampur in Uttar Pradesh, where we found that the weaving wasn't up to the mark, but there were women who were involved in this activity. So very slowly, in 2012, we moved their focus from weaving to stitching of pajamas. And these pajamas are now 25% of the Fab India men's pajamas come from Khurrampur. So this is actually teaching artisan groups a new skill and being able to absorb that into our system. We are also looking at Bagru, where we are going to teach Dabu for women. So you're going to have women units which work with Dabu. And in Jaipur, we are looking at Patua work, which is, again, women-oriented with jewelry and tassels coming in. So I think along with local livelihoods, we also look at the issues of urban migration, of reversing this trend. And if we are successful in strengthening this, this is a great step forward, because the skills which are lost to urban areas in terms of artisans becoming plumbers, becoming bricklayers, that's typically what happens when they come to the cities. Instead of keeping alive a skill which is very central to who we are. I mean, every time we have a Festival of India, it is these skills that we are showing there. But how much is actually being done for livelihoods on the ground level? I think we really do need to take a look at that. And I personally am actually quite proud to be part of Fab India. And I say this because you really feel that it's more than just a livelihood, even for me, the way it is for the crafts people. So thank you very much.
To take the break first, or
we have 10 minutes for questions,
and then we'll have our first tea break. So, and if you can just stick your hand up if you want to ask a question, we'll do it in an orderly fashion, I hope. So, any questions from the floor from our two speakers so far? Right over there.
So this question is to both Archana and. So I believe that the way craft aesthetics have developed over the centuries, it's been because of a certain slowness of practice, and because of that rootedness, the aesthetics and vocabulary has been such that today, so many years down the line, designers and all of us can still continue to keep drawing from it. And it was also because production remained limited to a certain extent. But with today's shift in the production, in which we're talking about, seeing this as a livelihood option for thousands, and the change in fashion and, the compulsion to keep coming out with new designs, what is the shift that you think is likely to happen moving forward?
Should I take that?
Yeah.
I think one thing that we do need to understand about the nature of craft-based work is that the basic unit will always remain the same. It's always one craftsperson working. It's not like a factory situation where suddenly, it becomes an automated process. So as far as that is concerned, I mean, where you talk about the slowness and it's not as though that is impacted. So if you have a beautiful sari which is taking 15 days to weave, it continues to take 15 days to weave. What changes then is that you have 4 weavers, or you are developing skills which allows 10 people to work, creating more product. There is a complete understanding the quality is not the compromise.
Question that I had, if I can sort of link it with this, is that in the way the production is organized, we have tiers and tiers of people playing different functions. And as the markets are booming, we are seeing that a lot of artisans, master craftsmen, and even entrepreneurs are taking the lead with marketing. What happens really to the last person down the line who's actually the weaver or the printer or the person who's actually doing? I mean, because I've also been in a production setup, and I've realized that, all of us very rarely actually interact with the person who's at the at the end of the line. It's normally the master craftsman we interact with. And what do you feel is the situation at that level? Do you think that the lifestyle, the quality of life, quality of production practice is improving for that last person down the chain?
See, if you look at it traditionally, the pattern has always been like that. Craft has always been arranged for the master craftsman, and then you have people who he works with it. This whole idea of apprenticeship is very much a part of the way craft is taught and the way craft moves forward. I don't think we need to look at it as a vertical ladder. I think it's more of a lateral development, because even if we look at our 4th generation, Fab India has been working with people for almost 4 generations now. We started in 1960, and we had this very long gestation period which allowed us to build very deep relationships with artisans and with craftspeople. So we have 3rd, 4th generation people who supply to Fab India. Now when we look within that fold, we also find that some of the people there, the youngsters, would like to manage their father's units, or would like to look at marketing, or would like to study and take craft to a different level, or look at export. We see a lot of energy there. We see a lot of excitement there, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. So my point over here is that it's not one or the other. Within the community itself, you have a lot of churn happening, So it's not as though you just have the middleman who's sort of pressing down and people are getting further oppressed. You have a lot of excitement happening right there within the unit. We see a lot of designs which come up from there. We see it is a two-way exercise. It's not that we say this is what you need to do. We also get a lot of feedback from there. That would you like to look at this? आप ये देखना चाहेंगे? वो कहीं और से आए थे, उन्होंने हमें ये दिखाया. That kind of conversations are very real that happen. You're talking to people who are very skilled in what they do, and we are very aware of that. This whole thing about it being the bottom of the pyramid is a very unfortunate sort of way of looking at it for people like Bandhej and Fab India who are retailers, who look at that space. It is full of knowledge and a lot of excitement, and all the skill that we bring to the shop floor is from there. So that is definitely is not a vertical thing. It's very linear.
Sorry, we have a question here first, and then Janki.
Hi, my name is Tanveen, and I work with Arshad here and with Fab India. We make wooden home decor. Arshad is a block carver, and our sort of hybrid has been that we use the block carving skill along with carpentry, and we make home decor products. So my question is about working with individual artisans. You said a lot of times in your presentation about individual artisans and production related. We work with individual artisans, and all the time we are talking about how to motivate individual artisans. We know that we can't work in a factory setup. Earlier this year we thought that let's create a factory and let everybody come to the factory. We can work in a small karkhana, but I just want to maybe discuss offline with you in the how do you motivate individual artisans to produce? Because it's very difficult.
No, it is very complex. There is no doubt about it. It's not a simple solution, one size fit all kind of a scenario. But livelihood linkages are huge. I mean, this is. We had an example where somebody who's wearing a burqa and not allowed to step out suddenly becomes the main, breadwinner, and then is traveling beyond, and enough PAN cards and dealing with everything. It's the livelihood linkage. Economics is the great understanding. I think that's a very important thing. And also innovation. I mean, all of us have parents who have homes with those 5 elephants or 10 elephants, one after the other. How many can you sell of those? Finally, you have to use those skills to create lamps, to change the idiom, to go into home decor. So innovation is very big. And yes, of course, motivation is a large part of the exercise.
Archana, would you like to
Yeah.
say how you motivate people?
No, I think it works in the, It is, I think in anybody working in this area, first of all, has to understand what an artisan has to offer. And if you work within those parameters, then there is a lot that one can do. And eventually it's also to do with sustained work. If there is sustained work, obviously the artisan wants to work. There is no great other alternative. People are losing more and more jobs today, whether it's to technology actually and to automation. So, and when you're talking of skill, there is this vast amount of skill that is already available in the country. So now it's how best can one use it, and with its livelihood with dignity. So when you were talking about it's to work, it's to be able to work, and that is why I feel loads of individuals working, where you have the time and space to work with the artisan to understand what the skills are, and then develop with it. And that's why I would constantly use the word collaboration. Then I think that it becomes a great partnership. And the whole idea of the craft is the go slow movement, which I think is gaining all over the world. So there is no reason to push this production. We are not talking of mass production. The machines can produce all that you need. We are going back to sustainability and to see these large numbers of skill that is already available. How best can this be utilized in the most dignified way? And I think that's why that dignity and labor, like dignity and livelihood, becomes an important aspect.
In fact, the joke between Asher and me is that if our labor, if our artisans and if you're having too many issues, we should just get a laser machine.
I think we can take
That's his threat all the time.
We can take one last question, Janaki.
Thank you for your wonderful presentations. I learned a lot. But what really interested me was when both of you spoke about livelihood interventions and generations, which I think is the biggest challenge that, not just the craft sector, but any other sector, whether non-farming sector and even within farming sector, also in terms of value additions to the raw product spaces. What I was wondering was, having seen the approaches of Pradhan and others and so on, what I was wondering was, and this is addressed to both of you, is that it appears that you do not have a static model or a generic model of livelihood interventions. Rather, both of you have very alive and very interactive and changing models, if one could call, or frameworks of livelihood interventions, which are specific, which are evolved, I think, on the field, with depending upon the unit and the craft that you're dealing with. Unit I mean by the individual or cooperatives and so on. I think what I'm interested in is that how do you consolidate this when you're going ahead? What are the processes that both of your organizations have evolved which keeps this alive? I think that is very important. Not just evolving and being alive and active and responsive to the field situation, but as an institutional, documentation and consolidation of this learning, which takes your work forward.
No, I think in this craft situation there is no one standard way of doing, and that is why this whole mode of production is so completely different than the machine produced, where it's much more programmed. So I think the response needs to be at that individual level. And of course there is learning from each area. There are common problems or common issues and all. But I really do think here, the response here is at a much more personal level. It cannot be a very standardized way of functioning.
What interested me was that how you build this into your institution as part of your institution learning and as part of your institution systems. My question was to do that. How do you internalize as part of your institutional growth and maybe a structure? And
So let me take that.
Yes.
So with Fab India, we are very structured in the way we plan. So we're always planning ahead. Even if you look at the promotions that we do, they come in a year and a half in advance. It's not as though we are on the ground and saying, this is nice. There's a lot of planning that actually goes into bringing the product there. We have very deep understanding of what is possible and what is available and what can be done. You're looking at two organizations which have worked for close to 60 years, 40 years on the ground for you and a little longer for us. So what you're actually seeing is a very deep, imbibed understanding of this sector. So it's also, what we know of it, what we plan for ourselves. We work with vision plans which, are always a 4-year ahead. Like even the clusters that I spoke about, we are already looking to see when we can scale up, when they will engage commercially with Fab India, what is the kind of product that will come from there, how will it reflect what it is that the people already are doing there, the artisans there, what is the livelihood impact of this. So while it's a very lively sector, there is also this planning, the foundation of planning for us is pretty strong.
I'm so sorry, because we are going to miss. So Anuradha, very quick question.
There you are. Yeah.
We had a lot of incidents in Fab India where from the master craftsman to the last person within this chain of who's working with them for that particular craft, we've seen a lot of growth in the last person as well and measured it in the sense that a lot of them have started their own businesses. They become individual entrepreneurs, which is very heartening. And for Fab India, going back to the Chanderi story, they took very last moment. It's very heartening to see the kind of living conditions that have improved tremendously. They have toilets. They've been motivated to come out and say that because Fab India and related organizations around for supplying directly indirectly to us have allowed them that kind of opportunity to improve their conditions, living conditions also. Very, very nice to know that, the impact reaches to a lot of person, not just the master craftsman. And the master craftsmen, the Jabbar Bhai is here, and they are also very aware to let their teams thrive they want to. I think that's also something very nice that's happening.
And I must add something now that Anu is here. Anu is head for creative in Fab India. We were talking about it yesterday, and exactly what you were saying. When you get yardage, say about 1,100 meters of cloth, which is because the sun was not out, the color isn't quite what it was supposed to be. What do you do with that? So Anu was, she was reminding us of the time when it was reworked, the entire thing with overprinting. So you got an absolutely unique, different solution to what you set out to getting. So there is your space for a little bit of interaction there, so that the product itself, you understand the product and you understand that things can go wrong with it, or they cannot. It isn't what you were quite looking for, and then you create something else with it. So there's a lot of scope for that kind of interaction also within the framework.
Actually, should not lose heart. There's so much more that can happen.
No lasers.
I just want to say the whole problem with this sector is there is so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So perhaps we can do it over tea now. It's a very short tea break, and we come back in 12 minutes because we've cut into it by 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
The fresh air. We now... Not easy. Adam? जगह है कि नहीं है? हाँ, ठीक है. We now start the second part of our morning, and we have Jabbar Khatri, Master Ajrak Printer, and Adam, his son, who carries on in the profession in conversation with Dr. Edwards.
All right. Is that better? Yeah. Even I can hear that now. I'd like to, well, probably needs no introduction at all, but I'm going to introduce him anyway for the perhaps one or two people in the audience who haven't met Abdul Jabbar Khatri, so Jabbar to most people, and his son Adam. Jabbar's one of our research partners for the British Academy project, and he also worked with me on a Levium project on block printing. And he and Adam are block printers and dyers from Dhamadka village in Kutch district, Gujarat. Jabbar and Adam specialise in the use of natural dyes, and they're very well known for a textile called Ajrak. So I'm going to start by asking Jabbar to tell us a bit about Ajrak and about your family's involvement in the craft.
Yeah, hello to everybody. Ajrak is a speciality of Kutch, Thar region and Rajasthan and Sindh, Pakistan, where it is made by Khatri community. We print the both side, cloth on both side using mordant and dye in indigo and madder. The process takes to 14 to 21 days to complete. Our traditional customers are Maldari, animal herders. They are using lungi, turban and shoulder cloth. And it is my hereditary craft, and I am the 9th generation of my family to work as a block printer.
Take you there.
And my son Adam and Noman are the 10th. My father, Muhammad Siddiq, taught me the craft like all printers, dyers in Dhamadka. About 1945 onward, he worked with chemical colors, which our customer liked, but he had a special interest in natural dye and thought this is our traditional craft, but chemical dye are not our traditional colors. So he started working with natural colors again, indigo, madder and iron for black, and taught me and my brothers Abdul Razak and Dr. Ismail how to use them. Since 1972-73, our family has working only with natural dyes. Like our father, we 3 brothers, me, Abdul Razak, and Dr. Ismail, have taught our sons block printing and dyeing with natural colors.
So actually your father led the revival of natural dyes in India and helped to re-establish them on a commercial basis. And can you tell us how that happened and what things helped with that revival?
Yeah, in 1973, the government set up Gurjari, Gujarat State Handicraft and Handloom Development Corporation. The MD was Brij Basin Saab, जो आज यहाँ पर है हमारे साथ. He came to Kutch searching for different crafts and wanted to buy directly from artisans. That is how met my father. Mr. Basin invited my father to make ajrak for the Gurjari shop in Ahmedabad. My father knew our traditional market was nearly gone. Our local customer had interested to wear polyester ajrak, even shirt pant, so our local business was nearly finished. Mr. Basin sent some designers from NID, National Institute of Design, to help my father develop new production for the city market. The designers are Sulekha Gulri, Madhurima Patni, Gitto Ben, and Archana Ben Shah. I want to say something about that original designers. They came to local bus to fund us. They slept outdoors in our village. People didn't like outsider staying in Dhamadka. It was not easy to them.
So it was through Mr. Basin and Gujri that your father started to produce for a new market in the 1970s. Traditional textiles were adapted for new products. And can you tell us what sort of goods that your father made, and how did the change from old customers to new ones affect your family business?
Yeah, my father making traditional lungi and turban and shoulder cloth, and woman is using for chunni, for bandhani, tie and dye style, for skirt and chunni. And now is changing the market and changing also pattern and not pattern but changing of the cloth, like bed sheet, tablecloth, napkin, running material, and cushion cover, other design like Jimardi and Hydri Booty. Before the Gurjari work, our production was small. Sometimes selling was good, sometimes very little. If the rain came, the Maldari had money and would buy new ajrak. When there was drought, they didn't. With Gurjari, our business grew. Gurjari gave a lifeline to all craft in Kutch.
So that was good, wasn't it? Regular orders and regular money.
Yes, my father also starting showing his work in exhibition in India and foreign country. He was invited to Sweden and USA. Then people were interested in our craft, and they started coming to Dhamadka to our workshop.
I know there was a lot of interest in Ajrak in Japan, where they have a long heritage of resist dyeing, shibori. And all these resist techniques used in Kutch, printed resists like lime and gum that you use, and the wax resist that printers in Mundra use, and then the tide resist of Bandhani started to come to the attention of many people, and not just in India.
Yeah, our work reached more people, and more visitors, foreigners and city people came to our workshop.
So working with Gujari and combining modern design with a heritage craft created a whole new market for Ajrak that extended beyond India. And these initiatives actually helped to sustain your craft. I know you and your brothers haven't worked with Gujari for quite a long time, but you do continue to work with designers. And can you and Adam just give us a few examples of the designers that you're working with?
Archana Ben, we still work with Archana Shah. She uses our block printing mainly for fashion.
And we've just listened to the bandage story, which saw Archana establish one of the first designer stores in India. And she was one of the first designers in India to marry fashion and craft on a commercial basis. So who else have you worked with?
Jenny Houseco in Delhi, 1991-92. She showed us a photo, some first art textile in the museum in Paris, and asked if we could print it.
So she also pushed you to use more colours, blue, black, and red. And you developed other colours.
Yep, Jenny pushed us to more colors. Till then, most of our work was with indigo, madder, and iron.
So that was the blue, black, and red, like in the Fustat. Yeah. And you did other colours with her.
Yeah, yellow and green.
Okay. And was that difficult to do?
No, we already knew those colors. Yellow we make with pomegranate and turmeric. For green, first you dye in indigo and with indigo, and again with yellow and yellow. Our traditional products have a lot of pattern, so if the dye is patchy, you can't see it. But for plain colors and big area, this is problem.
So how did you solve that?
Yeah, my brother, Dr. Ismail, he is searching some new, because we are first is painting for jute. Now my brother is thinking, and they are making spray, or put the cloth and the earth and the spray to pomegranate skin and turmeric, and that one is result is very good.
Okay. And I remember seeing early versions of Ishmael's invention. It was one man using a bicycle pump to power the spray, and then 3 others to keep it going. So this is a modified version. This is with a diesel pump, so less manpower involved in it, but still it takes 3 or 4 men to manipulate the tube that feeds the dye liquor. And you do so many more colours now, don't you? I know your range has expanded a lot.
Yeah, also our fabric range, now we work with wool, silk, chanderi, maheshwari, and well as cotton.
And I know Fab India demands a huge variety. Can you tell us about your work with them? Perhaps over to Adam now.
In 1995, we started working with Fab India. Now they are our biggest customer. One order can be as much as 10,000 meters. They take ajrak and many other designs from us.
So just to, really don't need to say this because I think Prabhalene's illustrated what the company's about so much, but John Bissell originally concentrated on using, and I quote, those fabrics that cannot be easily duplicated on a machine. And I think, again, as Prabhaleen outlined, Fab India's undergone considerable expansion since 1990 when John's son William took over at the helm. And I think Prabhaleen identified some of the contingencies that the company has dealt with as a result of that expansion. So while it's generated a lot of opportunities for block printers like Jabba and Adam, it's also imposed tight schedules and price points that some artisans find hard to meet. They need training to understand that process. So how did you, or how do you manage to work on such large regular orders? It must be quite a challenge. I mean, for example, is labour a problem? The orders from Fab India, I'm aware, provide work for many people, but if you've not got the men available to do that work, how do you cope? What do you do?
Yeah, labor is problem. Takes more than 2 years before a new man is understand my work. I am every year 2 new boys for teaching for our work. Every year 2 persons.
The printers.
Yeah.
I mean, does it ever mean that you have to turn work away?
No, so far we have managed. We have our regular customers, including some designers like Rajesh Pratap Singh and Asif Singh. After Fab India, our next biggest customer is Maiwa Handprints. We get large orders each year from Maiwa Handprints from Charlotte. We started working with her in 1997. We do 2 orders for Maiwa each year: bedsheets, tablecloth, and cushion cover and yardage. The Maiwa design team comes every year to discuss design and new development and to check the quality.
Maiva Foundation is good support for in earthquake in 2001 and 2000. Yeah. We when we lost our workshop and homes, and he helped with water problem. We also received good help from many other organizations like Dastakari Art Samiti and Dastakar also.
And I know you and your brothers don't like to dwell on the earthquake, but the community had to just completely rebuild. And it was just such a hard time. But some of those problems are separate from that, and they continue. Could you talk about some of those?
After the earthquake, there was more iron in the water in Damadka, which made our colors dull. Our community decided to buy land and build a model village with a central effluent treatment plant and rainwater capture and water recycling. All these things. That village is Ajrakpur, and without help from Jaya Jetli, the land for the village wouldn't have been possible. After 15 years earthquake, our project is not finished. The central effluent treatment plant will open later this month.
So that's a running project. I mean, the earthquake was an extraordinary event, but on a day-to-day basis, block printers and other artisans all over India have the same urgent environmental problem, which is water shortage.
Yeah, this is no water management at any level. When my 9-time grandfather came from Sindh, why did he came to Damadka? Because there was a river, and our work need running water and washing and dyeing. Our work need running water for washing and dyeing. Kutch a desert area, and so many people is making tube wells and groundwater is take, and that river is dry in the 1990. After we make tube wells and take that water, so in the earth some coming water with some minerals like iron, and last year my family is making tube well, they are coming alum also inside. So this is affected for our work.
So you've also mentioned labour, but I mean, are there any other things that threaten your craft? Perhaps over to
Copying. People come and take a sample of our work, then they copy it on a screen. Now they are doing digital prints as well. Many units in Rajasthan do this. Some designers too. Even in Damadka, there are men who screen print ajrak and sell it in the hand print.
And back to that. Will GI registration, so geographical indications for those of you not familiar with the Act, will that help to stop the copying issue? I mean, after all, it's what the 2003 Act is for.
No, any legal case take time and cost a lot of money. Screen print and digital print are very quick and easy to do. Then they are on the market.
So thank you. And I think from all that you've said about your craft, it's economically sustainable. But in order to sustain it in the Kutchi environment, that effective government support is needed. Moreover, there's a long-term environmental management plan needs to be in place, and I think not just for the industries like craft, but for domestic use as well. So similarly to protect your cultural heritage against copy, the government needs to ensure that the GI Act actually has teeth, that it works, it's powerful.
Without some government support, heritage is in risk.
Okay, so that's us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice one. All right.
Any questions? Yes, Janki.
Yeah. Thank you for a wonderful and very knowledgeable talk. आई हैव 2 क्वेश्चंस बेसिकली.
आप
एक है
हिंदी में बोल
मेरी कच्ची पच्ची हिंदी है. मेरी कच्ची पच्ची हिंदी है, तो पहले ही मैं माफी मांग रही हूँ. अच्छा, 2 मेरे प्रश्न है. आपने मैडर इस्तेमाल किया है,
हाँ.
लेकिन मैडर जो है अभी वो शेड्यूल्ड उसमें आ गया, फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस है.
हाँ.
उसका क्या आपको मिलता है, कितना सप्लाई है? क्योंकि आप ऑर्गेनिक डाइस बना के उससे आप काम करते हैं, तो इससे जो है आपके काम पर, डाइस के ऊपर कुछ प्रभाव पड़ा है? इसकी ये जो चैलेंज है आपने इसको कैसे एड्रेस किया, कैसे सुलझाया? एक ये है. दूसरा है, मैं दोनों अभी बता देती हूँ. दूसरा है कि अगर मैं बाजार में खरीदने जाऊं अजरक के कपड़े को, मैं कैसे पता करूं कि ये ओरिजिनल है और ये स्क्रीन प्रिंटेड डिजिटल वाला है? एज ए कंज्यूमर मैं पूछ रही हूँ. शुक्रिया.
मैडर का जो आप बता रहे हैं वो एक तो अपने आसाम साइड से अवेलेबल था, और उसका इतना डिमांड नहीं है मैडर कलर का कि लोग ज्यादातर अलीजरीन और अभी ज्यादा इंडिगो पसंद कर रहे हैं. और मैं अभी अवनी में भी गया था, वहाँ उत्तराखंड, वहाँ वो लोग ग्रो भी कर रहे हैं उसका, और उसके वो जब डिमांड बढ़ेगी, जैसे हमारा यूज बढ़ेगा, तो लोग उसका वो बोएंगे और उसमें से वो निकालेंगे. मगर मजीद का ये है कि हमको उसके रूट चाहिए कलर के लिए, तो वो पेड़ 5 साल के बाद खत्म होगा और दूसरा उससे पहले लगाना पड़ेगा. ये साइकिल अगर चालू रहा तो मैडर में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगा मेरे ख्याल से. अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो मैडर मिलना मुश्किल है, मगर अभी इजी अवेलेबल है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. और दूसरा आपका क्या क्वेश्चन था?
मेरा प्रश्न था कि अगर मैं बाजार जाऊं अजरक खरीदने,
हाँ.
मैं कैसे पता करूं कि ये ओरिजिनल है और ये दूसरा नकली है?
ये तो हम प्रिंटर हैं, हम ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग करते हैं, उसको भी धोखा दे जाते हैं, तो फिर अब आपको कैसे पता, कैसे हम समझाएं कि आप कैसे उसको पहचान पाएंगे? और स्क्रीन का तो ये है कि अब वो फ्लैट होगा वन साइड, और उसका जो अभी 36 इंच विड्थ का पूरा फर्मा होता है, तो वो अगर आप 36 इंच विड्थ पे अगर आप चेक करेंगे तो आपको पता लग सकता है कि ये स्क्रीन है या ब्लॉक है. और ब्लॉक का क्या होता है कि वो टेबल के ऊपर छपता है, तो कहीं प्रेस ज्यादा आ गया कोई ब्लॉक में प्रेस कम आया, तो जो उल्टी साइड है वो आपको उसका असलियत बता सकता है.
उल्टी साइड में भी रंग होगा?
उल्टी साइड में रंग होगा, मगर जो अगर ब्लॉक से किया हुआ है, हाँ. तो आपको पता लग सकता है, क्योंकि कोई ब्लॉक तो 6x6 का होगा या 7x7 का होगा, हाँ. तो जब प्रिंट करेंगे तब उसके ऊपर कहीं प्रेस ज्यादा आता है, कहीं कम आता है, तो उसकी वजह से वो आपको उसके जब बैक साइड है वहां पर दिख सकता है. अच्छा. कि ये ब्लॉक है. अगर स्क्रीन है तो पूरा इवन होगा.
ठीक, ओके, थैंक यू.
शुक्रिया, आपने बहुत अच्छा हमें लोगों को समझाया. हाँ. मेरा एक प्रश्न रंग से ही मुतालिक, हाँ. जो आप ब्लैक कलर आयरन से यूज करते हैं, क्या हाँ. इसका कोई सब्स्टिट्यूट है, कुछ और हो सकता है क्या? वजह मैं आपको बता देती हूँ. मैं म्यूजियम में क्यूरेटर हूँ, और हमारे पास 100-150 साल पुरानी चीजें हैं, और जो सबसे ज्यादा रंग जल्दी खराब करता है कपड़े को वो काला है. तो हमें एज ए म्यूजियम क्यूरेटर प्रिजर्व करने में बहुत दिक्कतें आती हैं, उसको कैसे रोका जाए. तो मेरा ये खाली एक सुझाव है सबके लिए कि अगर उस ब्लैक जो आयरन से बनता है उसको सब्स्टिट्यूट कर सके, तो जो आप लोग आर्टवर्क कर रहे हो वो म्यूजियम्स में बहुत समय तक रखा जा सकेगा.
नहीं, उसके अंदर भी ये जो अजरक के अंदर जो ब्लैक यूज होता है वो नेचुरल तरीके से जो उसको फर्मेंट करते हैं, जैसे गुड़ और चने का आटा डाल के 8 दिन रखते हैं, मगर जो उसका सही क्वांटिटी में इस्तेमाल हो तो उसको ब्लैक को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आता है. अगर वो ओवर है तो वो कपड़े को जला देता है और फिर वो पहले ही वहां खत्म होता है. नहीं, अभी जो है वो ये जो आयरन का जो बनाते हैं वो नहीं बना रहे हैं, डायरेक्ट फेरो सल्फेट यूज कर रहे हैं, और पहले भी होता था, इसलिए अगर शायद फेरो सल्फेट का होगा तो वो वहां पर कट सकता है.
चंद्रशेखर,
नहीं हुआ है. वो मीरा जी ज्यादा बता सकती हैं, क्योंकि उनके हाथ के नीचे मैं तो इतना वो पढ़ता नहीं उस झंझट में, क्योंकि मुझे जो काम करना है वो करना है। बाकी अब जो भी कॉपी करेगा, जो भी करेगा, इतना बड़ा वर्ड है, उसके अंदर तो होता रहता है।
आपने अच्छा कहा, ये झंझट जो शब्द का वो बड़ा अच्छा मुझे लगता है कि ये आगे वाले सेशन में डिस्कस होगा कि अजरक प्रैक्टिस हो रहा है और उसी के साथ साथ उसी इलाके में, उसी प्रीमाइसेस में अजरक स्क्रीन प्रिंट
हाँ हो रहा है।
तो ये बहुत बड़ी चेतावनी है, समस्या है। हम किस हद तक उसको इग्नोर कर सकते हैं और क्या कर सकते हैं इसके लिए? क्योंकि
और यहाँ एक बात आप और भी सुन लो कि उस फैमिली में हो रहा है जहाँ पर उन्होंने नेशनल अवार्ड भी लिए हुए हैं। हाँ, वो भी मैं आपको बता दूं। हाँ, ठीक है।
Yes, this is a big issue for our next session. Archana, you had a question? Okay. Yes, Damini.
एक और चीज कहना चाहूंगी कि जो लोग कॉपी कर रहे हैं,
हाँ,
जो स्क्रीन प्रिंट बन रहा है, ये भी आप सबको बता दें कि वो पर मीटर उसकी कॉस्ट भी कम है। वहाँ भी प्रॉब्लम होती है, क्योंकि वो लोग कम दाम में पर मीटर बेच सकते हैं, जो आपको डिसएडवांटेज होता है।
हाँ, देखो ये अजरक जो है, नॉर्मली अगर अजरक लेने जाएंगे तो 200 और 250 60 में आपको मिलेगा। जैसे कपड़ा चेंज होता जाएगा उसमें वो प्राइस बढ़ता जाएगा। वही चीज अगर स्क्रीन में है तो 55 से 60 रुपया उसकी वैल्यू है। हाँ हाँ,
Yes, Tanvi.
मेरा सवाल हैंडीक्राफ्ट स्टाइल ही है कि सेम प्रॉब्लम हमें भी है, लेजर वर्सेस हाथ की काविंग, एग्जैक्टली सेम इशू। लेजर से मिनटों में होगा, हाथ से घंटों में होगा।
I think some of this will have to change because, like they've used the spray, it is just to make it more economical because you can't possibly you have the craft, but it has to be sustainable and it has to be worthy for people to be able to buy, because everybody does not understand that this is so expensive. You look at the project, once you see the Ajrak going through those 45 days, and when you're really deeply into it, you realize that what the colors come out to be, and that's why you appreciate it. So when it's in the market and it's screen printed, I think it's for mass consumption, and those people are not bothered. They don't want to know where this product has come from. They're just buying it for the look.
It's also the new market opportunities, Charlie, which are also threatening the way perhaps even the craftsman is looking at their own work and how the world is looking at their own work. So demanding that kind of work. So it's a huge threat for the craftsman to stay ahead of the crowd, but the customer and the new markets that are happening, they are happy to just take a laser, to Tanveer's question, or a screen, Jawad bhai, which has gone through the same rigors. Jawad bhai, screen जो पूरे डाउन के प्रोसेस से गया है, जैसे आप देखेंगे वेस्ट राजस्थान में भी कर रहे हैं, वो भी अजरक बना रहे हैं, तो स्क्रीन से बना रहे हैं। तो उसमें क्या हुआ है, सिर्फ एक हाथ का, क्योंकि मात्र 8 प्रिंटर हैं उधर, तो वो क्या करें, उन्होंने कहा कि हमें इसको फिर भी रिवाइज रखना है, तो हम इसको स्क्रीन पर लाएंगे। तो एक एंड पे वो है और दूसरे एंड पे है कि अब पिगमेंट वर्जन उसकी निकाल रहे हैं जो दिल को और दिखाती है, जो 55 रुपए में आएगी, जो आप अपनी रिटेलर्स को देखते हैं बेचने के लिए। बट ये डिमांड तो मार्केट से ही आ रही है, तो मार्केट की डिमांड को कैसे बैलेंस करना है, सबसे बड़ा डिस्कशन पॉइंट आज की दिन में यही है। मार्केट जो मांग रही है उसको कैसे हम बैलेंस करें, और ट्रेडिशंस को कैसे और टेक्निक्स को कैसे कायम रखें।
Meera had a question.
थोड़ा अलग प्रश्न है। हमने फोटोग्राफ्स देखे जो एलिनेट ने प्रेजेंट किए थे, आप लंदन गए थे और वहाँ सबको आपने प्रिंटिंग सिखाया, तो देखा कि वहाँ सब लोग ऐसे मास्क पहने हुए हैं, एप्रन पहने हुए और प्रिंटिंग कर रहे हैं। तो अगर वेजिटेबल प्रिंटिंग हम कहते हैं वैसे तो हानिकारक नहीं है जैसे सिंथेटिक प्रिंटिंग है, और तो आपको क्या लगता है कि ये झंझट है या ये ज़रूरत है कि ये भी झंझट है?
नॉटिंघम यूनिवर्सिटी का रूल्स है कि हम अगर चूना भी यूज करेंगे तो वो मास्क और ग्लव्स के बगैर यूज नहीं कर सकते, तो वो उनका सिक्योरिटी का है, तो वो उसके बगैर वो वहाँ पर अलाउड नहीं किया था, इसीलिए वो सब पहन के वो चीज वहाँ पर हुई।
लेकिन
तो
अब
तो
हाँ,
हमारे जो फादर थे वो उसका कलर का वो जानने के लिए
तो आपको क्या लगता है कि ये जरूरी है और हमारी समस्या में भी हमें ये अपनाना चाहिए?
नहीं, हमको तो कोई अपनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, हम अपनाने जाएंगे तो काम नहीं कर पाएंगे।
अच्छा, जस्ट वन लास्ट थिंग ऋतु, कैन आई जस्ट से, मुझे सिर्फ इतना कहना है कि स्क्रीन प्रिंट पे तो काफ़ी चर्चा होगी और होनी भी चाहिए, लेकिन थोड़ा सिर्फ ये कहना है कि हम इतना भी सख्त ना बने स्क्रीन प्रिंटर पे, क्योंकि आज की हकीकत ये भी है कि जो खत्री स्क्रीन प्रिंटिंग अजरक कर रहे हैं वो आज के मालधारी वो स्क्रीन प्रिंटिंग लुंगी वो ही पहन रहे। तो जो मालधारी है उनके पास तो चारा अभी यही बचा है स्क्रीन प्रिंटिंग अजरक पहनने का।
मालधारियों के लिए स्क्रीन प्रिंट अजरक बनती, जैसे 1945 में हम केमिकल अजरक शुरू किया था, अगर वही मालधारियों के लिए बनती तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं था, क्योंकि मालधारियों को पता है कि ये केमिकल है। मगर जो स्क्रीन प्रिंट रनिंग मटेरियल और दुपट्टा और क्या क्या सब स्टॉल वगैरह आ रहा है और वो नेचुरल करके और ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग करके जो बेच रहे हैं, ये हमारा सवाल उनसे है।
करेक्ट, जो गलत बोल के बेच रहे हैं वो प्रॉब्लम है।
यस, नीता।
जैसा ऑर्डर होगा, जिस कलर में, रुबाब, टेमरिस्का, अलीजरीन, मजीद, इंडिगो, जिसमें ऑर्डर होगा हम उस हिसाब से ही बनाते हैं। हम उसका टाइम लेते हैं कि इस ऑर्डर में कितना टाइम लग सकता है और उस हिसाब से ऑर्डर चलता रहता है।
तो आपको मार्केट उतना टाइम देता है कि आप नेचुरल इंडिगो और नेचुरल मैडल में बनाए, जब इतनी क्वांटिटी में भी बनाते हैं?
हाँ, क्योंकि मेरा 90% फैब इंडिया के साथ है और उनके ऑर्डर बहुत अच्छा सेटअप है उनका कि वो 6 महीने पहले से ही वो उसके ऑर्डर आ जाते हैं। जब ये हमको जो मार्च में डिलीवरी देना है वो अभी से हमको स्टार्ट शुरू कर देना है, हमको फरवरी से पहले दे देना है, तो ये सब बहुत इजी है और साइकिल चलता रहता है। और एक डिजाइन में 10,000 मीटर तो 3-4 डिजाइनें होगी। तो मेरे पास, हम जब छोटे थे, जब शुरू किया था बसंत साहब के साथ, तब 1-2 वर्कर थे। आज हमारी फैमिली में 150 वर्कर हैं पूरी फैमिली में, तो काम निकालना आसान है। और जो राजस्थान की बात हो रही थी कि वहाँ पर लेबर अवेलेबल नहीं है और वो इसके लिए स्क्रीन प्रिंट कर रहे हैं, ये कोई रीजन नहीं है। अगर आप तैयार करो, उनको पूरा मजदूरी दो, तो वो वर्कर आ सकते हैं। जैसे हमारे पास जो 1972-73 में 2 वर्कर भी नहीं थे, आज 150 हमारी फैमिली में, और भी फैमिलियाँ बहुत है हमारे पास, 70 फैमिली है, तो सबके पास वर्कर है 10-15। तो ये सब कहाँ से आए? जब उनको तैयार किया गया जब तो वो उसके अंदर आज हैं।
मैं भी राजस्थान में काम करती हूँ और मेरा सेकंड क्वेश्चन इसी के संदर्भ में है कि जैसे आप इसमें हैं, आपके बेटे इसी काम में हैं, आपके बच्चे भी इसी में इंटरेस्ट रखते हैं, इसी में हैं?
हम तो चाहेंगे कि हमारे साथ वो हमारे पोते भी काम करें और वो अगर उसी माहौल में आगे बढ़ेंगे तो मेरे ख्याल से करेंगे। अगर उनको ये भी ग्रेजुएशन किया है, कॉलेज किया है इसने, मगर उसके बाद उसने काम संभाला है, तो हमसे अच्छा वो मैनेज कर सकता है।
तो अभी वो छोटे ही हैं?
वो पोता मेरा 3 साल का है।
बहुत सुंदर अजरक की ड्रेसेस पहन के घूमती है, लेकिन क्वेश्चन, क्योंकि आप काला डेरा या जयपुर के आसपास जब काम करते हैं तो वहाँ पर लेबर की इतनी दिक्कत नहीं है। तो जब बार मेरा रेफरेंस इसलिए था कि हम प्योरिस्ट नहीं हो सकते, एक बैलेंस कई बार बनाना पड़ता है कुछ सेक्टर्स को उसमें स्क्रीन प्रिंट में और ब्लॉक में। मैं बारमेर की रेफरेंस से बात कर रही हूँ, और बारमेर में आपको पता है जब ऑयल आया और जब तेल एंड एनर्जी आया तो वहाँ अपॉर्चुनिटीज इतनी बनी कि जितने लोग थे उनका इंटरेस्ट बहुत बढ़ गया। तो रानामल जी ने बहुत ध्यान से, बहुत प्यार से उन 8 लोगों को रिटेन करा है। 8 वो 12 ब्लॉक प्रिंटर्स हैं, ये डबल साइड अजरक ही करते हैं, लेकिन उनका पैरेलल मेजर बिजनेस जो है वो ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग में है, स्क्रीन में अजरक बनाते हैं, डाउन प्रोसेस से अपने सारी जो है टेक्निक्स है वही यूज करते हैं, और आपको पता है उनका काम काफी सिल्क में भी जाता है। तो ये समस्याएं रियल है और काफी बार इनको ठीक से नहीं मिलता। और बहुत बड़ी बात उनका ये भी है कि आप देखेंगे कि जितनी रिकग्निशन अजरक को और धमाका अजरकपुर को मिली है वर्ल्ड वाइड, उतनी अप्रिसिएशन जो पहले बात प्रवीण जी ने मेरी कही थी, वो अप्रिसिएशन एक प्राइड क्रिएट करती है नेक्स्ट जनरेशन को लाने में। ये सिर्फ पैसा का मामला नहीं है। सो वो चीज अगर हम बहुत और जगह पे क्रिएट कर सके, उनको नए प्लेटफॉर्म पे ला सके तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा।
अनामिका जी,
अभी आपने बताया कि आपके पोता 3 साल के हैं, बच्चे भी
नहीं, लड़कियां नहीं कर रही है। लड़कियां टाई एंड टाई करती हैं, डाई नहीं करती। और कुछ जो मेरी भतीजी है जो हमारे घर में नहीं कर रही थी, मगर जब हमने उसकी शादी कर दी भुज के अंदर, तो वो उसके हस्बैंड के साथ टाई एंड डाई का काम कर रही है, टाई करवा रही है, डाइंग भी करवा रही है वहां पर। हाँ, हाँ, मौका तो मिल रहा है, मगर वो अपने परिवार के साथ, वो एकदम से वो जैसे मर्द जाके बाहर जाके एग्जीबिशन कर सकते हैं, वो नहीं करेंगे। वो अपने उसके फैमिली के साथ ही वो करेंगे।
Oh gosh. मेरी एक ऑब्जर्वेशन है, हम जिस फील्ड में काम कर रहे हैं उसमें सब आदमी लोग हैं। वी वर्क विद ऑल मेन आर्टिजन्स, क्योंकि ब्लॉक कार्विंग है, जिस टाइप का काम है उसमें सिर्फ आदमी काम करते हैं। हम अगर विमेन को लाना भी चाहें, वो काम जो वो करेंगी वो कुछ पैकिंग का काम करेंगी एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट। आई मीन it's like forcing women to work in it. Like there's some crafts which are men oriented, and you know, I'm saying this also from the point of view that when you go for funding, everybody says, oh, you're not working with women, it's not cool enough. So that's just an observation.
Okay.
Yeah. अभी ये जो डिस्कशन जो मैंने सुना है, where there is screen printing and where there is digital image printing and hand block, I feel I have seen across at least couple of crafts. Similar thing is happening even in kalamkari in that kalahasti type. And what I feel is that since these are certain challenges that a lot of crafts are facing, and that there is a lot of demand which traditional hand से नहीं हो रहा है, मेरे को ये लग रहा है कि शायद हमें इस बात का सोचना चाहिए कि हम जैसे हैंड मार्क और सिल्क मार्क और वुल मार्क जैसे बना रहे हैं, अजरक में भी हम लोगों को और प्रति क्राफ्ट में हम लोगों को इस टाइप की मार्किंग लानी चाहिए कि ये जो है हैंड मार्क है, हाथ का है ओरिजिनल, और ये है स्क्रीन प्रिंटेड या वो है. इस तरह से अगर क्राफ्ट वाले भी सोचें और सभी लोग हैं, मार्केटर सभी लोग हैं, सोचें तो शायद क्राफ्ट्स को जो है आगे बढ़ने में भी उत्पत्ति होगी. और ये जो जीआई इश्यूज जो आ रहे हैं ना, काफी कुछ वो भी सुलझने में और क्लैरिटी आएगी कि और क्या इंटरवेंशन आना चाहिए. अभी मैं ये बात मैं इस तरह से बता रही हूँ क्योंकि अभी रिसेंटली नवंबर में ट्रेड फेयर हुआ था, इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड फेयर. वहां पे सारस कपाट जो भी हैं, सारे गवर्नमेंट के सारे डेवलपमेंट स्कीम्स में जो भी क्राफ्ट्स को दिए वो कारीगर अपने काम लेकर आते हैं. मुझे बहुत ताज्जुब हुआ कि वो जो कालाहस्ती कलमकारी का जो फ्लोरल प्रिंटिंग है और थोड़ा फिगरेटिव प्रिंटिंग है, जैसे गोपियां नाच रही हैं, घड़ा लेके जा रही हैं, उस टाइप के वो बना रहे हैं मद्रास के, चेन्नई के साइड पर, कोस्टल साइड पर, वो जहाँ पे एक जमाने में 400-500 साल पहले ये प्रथा काफी प्रचलित हुआ करती थी, काफी बड़े रेंज में. लेकिन पिछले 50-60 साल से तो कम से कम वो तो नहीं है. तो और वो जो फिर मैंने ध्यान से देखा, मैंने आपसे पूछा ना कैसे हम लोग पता कर सकते हैं, वो मैंने एक बैग खरीदा, मेरे को सैंपल चाहिए था बैग, वो स्क्रीन प्रिंटेड है, ठीक है, और वो उसको मार्केटिंग कर रहे हैं. एक तो सरकार ने उनको फंड्स दे दिए हैं कि ओरिजिनल है, और उनको स्पेस भी दे दिया है कि ट्रेड फेयर में आके अपना बेचें एज ओरिजिनल, जो जगह में एटलीस्ट इन रिसेंट मेमोरी कोई प्रोडक्शन नहीं है, कोई कारीगर नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है. और शायद एक आध बंदे को कुछ स्टेट अवार्ड भी दे दिया है, तो मुझे सोचने में, अभी मैं बैठी हूँ तो मेरे को प्रोसेस करने का थोड़ा समय मिला कि हम लोग इस विषय को हम थोड़ा विचार करें थोड़े गौर से कि क्राफ्ट्समैन की आज की क्या चैलेंजेस हैं, क्राफ्ट्समैन कैसे कर रहे हैं. और एक और बात इससे जुड़ती है सरकारी तरह से कि लाइवलीहुड जनरेशन के लिए सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स को तैयार, ये कलमकारी कालाहस्ती कलमकारी का हुआ है, वहां पे औरतों को ग्रुप बना देते हैं, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप, ट्रेनिंग दे देते हैं, क्या है स्टेंसिल से ठप 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 लगा दो, तो उनका लाइवलीहुड ये अलग तरीके से जनरेट हुआ है. थैंक यू.
Well, time is running short, and first of all I want to thank everyone here that we have such a lively and interested and involved audience. But I also want to apologize to those who don't understand Hindi, that I'm sorry that so much of the discussion is taking place in a language that you may not be easy with. But I think this bilingual stuff has really brought out so much more than what we would have heard otherwise. So I thank you, Jabbar, very much. Adam, thank you. हाँ जी, जवाब दे दो. I especially thank Adam because I believe this is his first exposure to a conference in Delhi. Thank you. And to Eleanor, and who would like to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to add a note of thanks to Jabba, because he's really taken seriously the role of mentoring his son over years as he learnt his craft, but also he's mentored him very seriously, helping him with dealing with this situation and learning to put together a PowerPoint and that sort of thing. So I'd just like to pay credit to both of them for the work they've put into this over the past, the 3 years of the project, but more recently for putting this PowerPoint together and deciding what they were going to talk about. So as I say, Jabba took a very serious line in mentoring, and Adam's worked very hard. So my thanks to both of them.
Our next speakers are in our session, which is on design education across time and place. So may I request Anamika Pathak ji, Rohini Arora, and Amanda Briggs-Good from NTU to please come on to the podium. Thank you. Just change.
And the organizers of this seminar, which is very, very fascinating, and I'm enjoying very much. But as I'm a curator in the National Museum, looking after the old textiles and the old archives, so I'm misfit in the gathering where the designers are there and many people are there. So I'm not the producer, but I'm an admirer, and I'm a preserver in the museum. So my role is to bridge a gap between the artisan, the designer, as well as the common audience. So I will speak about this museum potential, what museum can contribute for this sustainability, and what so far we are doing it. Plus, I have my friend, very good friend, Dr. Rohini Arora. She will put up the case study of the Chamba Rumal. So that's our presentation. So those who are not familiar with the museum, so quickly I will just mention that museum work on 3 C's. One is the collection of the artifacts. So there are different methods and processes for collecting the artifacts. Then the documentation and the conservation. Second C is the conservation, and the second component of the conservation is the preservation. So conservation is basically done by the conservator, who are the trained conservator, and where they put the chemical uses. But prevention aspect, as a curator, we do to just make the environment quite good. And the third is the communication, which is very, very important and close to our as a curator. So for the communication, we put the exhibitions, the permanent galleries, the temporary galleries, invite the scholars, the workshops, the lecture. So with all these things, we communicate what kind of archives we have and preserve it. Norms and the policies where we purchase the things, and apart from that we do the digitization. We have already started as the demand of the time that we have to digitize all the records. So we are in the process of putting that. So you can just see all the records which are on the website. So if you log in the WWF Museums of India, which is on the Ministry of Culture website, so all the museums, around 7-8 museums are there. So in those museums, whatever the artifacts we have, we are in the process of digitizing. So pictures are there, the basic information which are in the records, that is available. And the second is we have the website. So if you go to the National Museum website, so you will find many of the artifacts which are in our museums. Then we have registered in the Google Art Project. So you can see the walkthrough, the basic information. Around 200 artifacts of all our museum are there in the Google Art. Then we put up the exhibitions. Apart from the exhibition is such a thing that you put up the exhibition just for 2 months or 3 months. So just to preserve all this information, we come up with the publications also. So a number of publications are there. So this is our basic work, how our conservator preserve it. So in the first album, we have a shawl album. So we acquired in this fashion, the top one. And in the second stage, we get it repaired and properly kept, preserved. And the third is how we are preserving. And look at the topmost on the right side. That kind of condition, sometimes we acquire the antiquities. So in the second slide, you can see what our darners and the conservators and the preservation do. So this is the preventive aspect, how we keep our old costumes, old textiles. So that was the query for Jawarji, that we are facing the black, especially the print textiles. The black goes very easily and very quickly. So that is one of the challenge for our conservators also, to preserve it. So apart from that, the on-hands, we make a lot of awareness programs. So for the museum curators, we did the 4-day workshop in 2005. Then in 2009, we did another workshop, which was a little bit expanded with the conservator, the students, with the NMI, National Museum Institute, which is in the National Museum premises. Then that workshop was very, very appreciated, and we were asked to put that same workshop with the Manav Sangrahalaya Bhopal. So our all team went there and we put up their show. And recently, last year, we conducted a 3-month preventive care for the curators. So especially focus on the textiles. So around 12 curators were there from different parts of the country, from northeast to west to south. So we interacted very closely. There were hands-on experience. We asked them to work with us. So these kind of activities, we try to create the awareness with the professionals so that they should take care of their stuff in their own museums. So being a national museum, and we have a very good staff of our conservation. So with the team of conservation laboratory and ourselves, we put up this 3 months preventive cares for the curators. Then we have this permanent gallery, which soon going to be closed. And we are in the process of renovating the gallery. So this is the permanent gallery, which has been designed as per the technique of the artifacts and various regions, some thematical, some technical kind of a displays there. Then apart from the permanent gallery, we have the exhibitions. Whenever we got the opportunity to put up the exhibitions, so what I have found in the career of 3 decades, that in each and every exhibition, 2, 3, either 10 textiles are always there. The presence of textiles is always there. So that is very fascinating that we did this Patty and Splendor in National Museum. Then we put up the bridge culture. So these are catalog and the brochure of that exhibition. So sometimes we send the exhibition abroad. As such, there were 2 exhibitions. One was in Anandpur Sahib. First one, the IC on Stranger. The second, the Art of Sikh Kingdom, we sent to London. So like that, whenever we got the opportunity and were asked, we always put the textile forward. And I tell you, it's well received and well appreciated, wherever, whether it's India or outside India. And this was the first exclusive textile exhibition, which happened in 2002. Although museum started in 1949, it was, we moved in this building, the present building is 60. But there was always a part, textile remained always a part. But in 2002, the first exclusive textile exhibition, around 300 artifacts, we sent to Riyadh National Museum, and it was a collaborative effort of Bharat Kala Bhavan and 7 other museums of the country. And it was a 3-month show. Then in culture exchange program in 2002 and 3, we received this Malay textile exhibition, so which was mounted in the National Museum. That was again the first independent textile exhibition. And we especially designed the showcases and the lighting and the kind of a display, because prior to that, textile was just remain 1 or 2 showcases, so it never got attention to have a kind of a special showcase which need for the precious objects. Then following, we had this trade textile exhibition where we have mounted this palampore, embroidered. Such a huge textile work, all has been mounted by our artisans. We have a display unit, the presentation unit, workforce of carpenters. Whatever they are, we are asking, they are doing it. So we have a kind of a that workforce. That's how we are able to manage these kind of exhibitions, which was very, very successful. People have appreciated a lot. Then in 2007, they put up the Pichwai exhibition. So it was just a Pichwai and the Srinathji, Adoration of Krishna was the title, and it was done with the collaboration of Tapi collection, which is in Surat. Then recently we have put up this exhibition, The Art of Calligraphy and Beyond. So in this, which was curated by our department, Decorative Art Department, and we tried to explain the scope of the calligraphy, that it's not confined to the manuscript or the painting or the monuments. But if you look at the decorative art objects, whether it is utensils, whether it's wood carving, whether it's a small, tiny, precious stone, or the textile. So when it comes to the textile, so all the mediums means handwritten, the entire Quran is written on the talismanic jacket. Like that, number of exciting pieces were displayed in this calligraphy exhibition, which was held in the National Museum in 2015. And last year we sent a masterpiece in the fabric art of India, so that was a very, very popular exhibition. And National Museum has shown the presence there also. And 16 January, we did this Atut-Door Banaras brocade sari exhibition. So it was a combined effort by the National Museum and some of the designers. Then apart from the exhibitions, we provide the resources to study. So these are the textiles. You can have an idea that these has been widely studied by the students, the scholars, the PhD scholars, and so many things has been revived by the studying of our resources. So these are some of the revived things, which Rahul Jain has revived the Patka, the Abhishek Jain has revived the Persian velvet by studying our own collection. We have a 2 Persian velvet, which he has studied. Then Ashavalli Sari, Baluchiri Sari, which was not in my tenure, prior to me, somewhere in 60s or 70s, when Banaras took the revival of the Baluchiri Sari under leadership of Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay ji, as have been told. So at that time, the Banaras weaver, they came and studied our Baluchari sari. Then Shribhas Suparkar, who is working on the Banaras brocade, Sabyasachi Mukherjee. So this was the first exhibition which Rahul did, the Meenakari, spun gold and woven enamel. And apart from the various collections, he studied our National Museum brocade textile also. So he put up the exhibition in the National Museum in 1917. Then partly there were a number of subsequent exhibitions. This is the catalog of that exhibition. Then with the JK Handloom Handicraft Board, we helped them to NID students for the Pashmina revival, and the first exhibition was held in the National Museum, then IGNCA and ICC. And the Delhi Craft Council also, they came up with the Chamba Rumal proposal, and we offer them whatever the pieces are. They studied, and at least 3-4 they have revived from our object base. And apart from that, exhibitions, so far in my tenure, I have come across with the 3 students, PhD scholars, who has worked in the Chamba Rumal. So 2 are in the teaching fraternity, and one is in Varanasi, one is in Jalandhar, and the third one is Dr. Rohini Arora, who is directly involved in the sustainability and directly working with the artisans, although she is a teaching faculty also. Now I will request my colleague Rohini to put up the case of the Chamba Rumal, how she has revived, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I did my research on capacity building of artisans for the sustenance of traditional Chamba embroidery. These are some of the exquisite pieces of embroidery that derived me to work in this field. Just to start with a brief introduction about Chamba embroidery, it is basically a pictorial handicraft which originated in Pahari states in 16th century and flourished from 17th to 19th century. The stitch used was double-sided satin stitch, and the embroidery was double-sided. The base cloth used was unbleached muslin or khadar fabric. The threads used were untwisted silk yarns, and embroidery was worked in 2 different styles, folk style and classical style. There were different themes, designs, and motifs based on religion, local tradition, scenes from daily life, literature, and floral patterns. They were also based on Pahari miniature paintings. For an instance, this is a miniature painting, and this is the embroidery based on the same theme. There were a number of articles that were made. However, chamba rumals and wall hangings were the most popular ones. These chamba rumals were basically used for ceremonial coverings, whereas wall hangings were used for decoration purposes. However, with the decline of feudal system and lack of patronage given by the rulers, as well as during the decline phase of Pahari miniature painting, an apparent decadence in chamba embroidery was also noticed. Also owing to official disinterest and non-imaginative approach, the craft began to languish. The factors that were reducing the quality of products were studied in field study, and there was unavailability of raw material. Therefore, artisans were using bleached cotton, terracotta, and polyester, whereas threads, they were using twisted synthetic yarns after unwinding them. So the effect was unseemly. Whereas the compositions lacked clarity and detailing, the colors used were inappropriate, and designs were simple and less elaborate. There was a need to resuscitate the craft under the changed circumstances. The following objectives were undertaken. Firstly, to study the traditions, socio-cultural significance, as well as present status. Then to develop the recipes for dyeing base cloth and embroidery yarns, to prepare design catalog, and to develop a range of products, as well as to create awareness amongst the craftsperson. The study was conducted in 5 phases. In phase 1, analysis of traditional embroidery technique was undertaken. Then, dyeing of raw material, development of design catalog, product diversification, and intervention was carried out simultaneously with the above phases. Exploratory field study, it was conducted by carried by conducting pilot study through workshops and field visits, as well as secondary information was collected from various museums, libraries, and organizations. Just a moment, I need help. मैम वो मेन स्लाइड से हट गया है. The sequence is disturbed. Which is, if you just make it bigger, window. I want to go to that window. That's which side you want to go? The actual main PowerPoint presentation to make slides thing. You only have the PDF. No, that's okay. Just okay. Wait 1 second. Can I see that window? Yes, I want to go back. This? Yes, thank you. Okay. So these were the museums and the organizations that were visited. They were based in Delhi, NCR, Himachal, and other places as well. So for the primary information, area of study was Chamba and its periphery region. This was the sample size, and information was gathered through interview schedule. For dyeing of raw material, those dyes were selected which were easily available to the artisans in their household setups, like henna, turmeric, pomegranate rinse. 11 such dyes were chosen, and the procedures that were developed were easy to apply, keeping the limited infrastructure in mind. For dyeing of base cloth, bleached cotton fabric was dyed with hurrer to obtain the traditional color, whereas it was also observed in the field study that the shades of synthetically dyed yarns were not in line with those used in traditional times. Therefore, to recreate the aesthetics of embroidery, dyeing of embroidery yarns was also taken up. These are the field pics, which these procedures were learned from the master craftsmen based in Hyderabad. This was degumming of silk yarns, then the extraction of dye, pre-mordanting. These are the pictures. Then the application, and then post-mordanting. And finally, the testing of dyed raw material was carried out at Nitra. For the development of design catalog, original photographs was sourced from various museums and other sources. From these photographs, for example, this was the original photographs, and from this photograph, designs and motifs were segregated. They were then redrawn with the help of miniature artists, and design catalog was developed. For the product development, different fabrics were collected, assessed for their suitability for embroidery on these three criteria, and products were developed in categories of rumals, coverlets, wall hangings, small souvenirs, and apparel. They were then displayed in exhibitions held at IGNCA in 2010 and at World Craft Council General Assembly in Chennai. Intervention with artisans was carried out through workshops and regular follow visits to Chamba, and the following areas were covered. Now I will discuss my results. In the detailed analysis, 2 different types of fabrics were identified, and it was found that in muslin fabric, the stitch size was smaller and the quality of workmanship was fine, whereas on khadar fabric, the stitch size was bigger and the embroidery had raised appearance. This was the traditional method of drawing on fabric, where the first line sketch was made in light color, and then the details were cleared with dark ink. And embroidery was carried out without using any frames, and the most peculiar feature was to start and end embroidery without knots. The important embroidery features were identified and categorized as technical characteristics and decorative characteristics. Technical characteristics included stitch type, stitch direction, and outline stitches. 3 different types of stitches were identified from old specimen. Also, the 4 different types of stitch directions were seen, and the stitch used for outline was running stitch in contrasting colors. But the most important thing is that artisans are no longer using most of these features. Whereas the decorative characteristics included finishing stitches, edgings, and most importantly, these textures, which were seen extensively in old specimen but are no longer seen at present times. They were created by using the technique of voiding, and negative shapes were created by filling the background space. For the results of phase 2, this was the bleached cotton fabric, which when dyed gave this color, which was compatible with embroidery, with the colors of embroidery yarns. This fabric was fast to color washing, light, as well as dry cleaning. These were the 38 shades developed from 11 dyes. Most of them were fast, color fast, but however with few exceptions. For phase 3, the designs were classified as borders and motifs. There were total 768 motifs which were classified as black and white line sketches. Some of their pictures are as follows. They were further categorized as folk style and classical style. So these are tree motifs, human figures, different forms of gods, and these were the different borders that were seen in embroidery. For the product diversification, different fabrics were assessed, and it was concluded that higher the thread count, finer the fabric, and better the quality of workmanship. So for example, if in this case, thread count with 70 to 100, it was seen that the base cloth was visible between embroidery stitches, whereas the fabric with thread count above 160 showed best quality workmanship and minute detailing is possible. Whereas the fabrics with thread count lesser than with lesser thread counts was found suitable for less detailed work as well as for folk style embroidery. So other fabrics were also assessed like silk, chanderi, linen. And now the product development, they were done in categories of rumals. In rumals, replication of old museum pieces was done on unbleached muslin, colored muslin, and many others. These are some of the examples. In coverlets were also developed where design adaptations were made on colored backgrounds with different with fabrics with different thread counts as well as textures. They were made in monotone colors And the next category was wall hangings, which was based on themes. Like this one was based on Radha Krishna, then Ramayana, and many other such themes. Then the small souvenirs were also developed, and these were some of the apparels. These products were then displayed in RAS exhibition at IGNC and Chennai at Kevlar. This is my new work that I'm working at, and my main focus is on creating more of textures, detailing, and ornamentation. So they are also based on different themes. This is a woven design that is transformed into embroidery. These are new design adaptations for coverlet. This is a rough sketch, and it's in different color schemes. That's the hunting scene, and that's the apparels with single-sided stitch. And finally, the intervention with the artisans, I would just brief how I have done it. For technical characteristics, they were given two similar motifs for each type of activity. The first motif was made by the embroiderers as per their own choice, whereas the second motif was based on museum piece. And when both the motifs were compared, it was felt that the traditional ways of practicing the craft enhance the visual appeal of simple-looking motifs. They also made the stitch directory for future reference. And for decorative characteristics, they were given individual motif for activities like ornamentation, textures, and multiple use of colors in same motifs. These were some of the samples of finishing stitches, edgings. They were also given demo regarding the care and maintenance of embroidered articles. And in the end, it can be concluded that restoration of traditional aspects of craft reassociated them with a conventional form of craft. Dyeing of raw material helped in sustaining the craft at household level. Development of design catalog provided access to traditional themes, designs, and motifs, whereas product catalog exposed them to new design sensibilities, and intervention with the artisans helped in capacity building. Thank you. I'm also carrying my portfolio and the design catalog that I've developed. Those who are interested can see.
Thank you, Rohini. We will take questions at the end. So we now have Amanda.
India? Okay.
Okay, is that better? Okay, so I want to talk to you today about a very different context than the things we've been hearing about this morning, but I am obviously going to focus on sustaining cultural heritage, but in a very different way. I'm going to talk to you about lace design and lace manufacturing in Nottingham, which is famous for machine-made lace manufacturing over about the last sort of 200 years. The School of Art and Design was essentially built upon the lace industry, and I'm going to start there really in the 1840s. I think that there are some other aspects I could have talked about today to do with lace. Similarly, we've done a digitising project with what we have as a lace archive now. And I think, that has been clearly about sustaining that heritage in Nottingham. And also I could have talked about work that we've done with students and the way that we want students to use this archive and this heritage of Nottingham to inspire them to do contemporary creative design. But I've chosen to look specifically at something that we've been doing very recently, which is about trying to understand how, when an art school is beginning, where there is no history or heritage of teaching art and design in a country, how that develops and how that teaching pedagogy led to creative design and excellence in manufacturing over a period of decades and centuries. So that's going to be my focus for today. So one of the things that I want to talk about is that, give you a little bit of context, that art education began to be discussed in a formal way in the UK in the 1830s. And the UK government were very much persuaded that the UK was lagging behind in terms of other European countries, in terms of the quality of design. And so they decided that they wanted to start art and design education in the UK alongside the development of provincial museums. And the museums were really, alongside the art colleges, were intended to improve the nation's taste and begin to spread knowledge about the principles and understanding of design. And they hoped, really, that by having this kind of quite high moral ground about good quality design and the improvement of the nation's taste, that this would lead to an industrial culture. And that people would begin to understand and be educated about what good design looks like, and that would improve the economic status of the country, and that, you know, there would be political stability because of that. So in 1843, the Nottingham Government School of Design opened with the explicit purpose of actually supplying the local industry with appropriately trained designers. And Nottingham was the fourth art school in the country to open, the first being the Royal College of Art, that many of you may have heard of, which is a postgraduate institution based in London. And also colleges in Manchester and York. So Manchester was supporting the printed textile design industry, York was supporting the woven textile design industry, and then Nottingham was supporting lace and hosiery. So, and this all happened within 4 or 5 years, the beginnings of these art schools. So Nottingham lace is machine-made lace, and machine-made lace had been invented in Nottingham around 1817 with a machine called the Lever's lace machine, and there are still Lever's lace machines all over the world, in China, in America, in Russia, who are producing Nottingham lace. You can produce Nottingham lace on anywhere in the world as long as it's on a Nottingham lace machine. And the inspiration to create a machine that made lace was really about expanding the market. So there was a hand-making tradition in Nottingham. There was a hand-making tradition, all over the UK, but particularly in Nottingham, around bobbin lace. And so the Lever's machine was invented to imitate bobbin lace and imitate handmade lace. Lace, as you may know, is a very time-consuming process if you're making it by hand. So this was intended to speed up and extend and make more democratic the ability to purchase lace, and bring that sort of down so that it could start to be purchased by the middle classes rather than just the upper classes. So just a few pictures here. In 1865, Nottingham built its first art school. The building that it had existed in for the sort of previous 20 years was an adapted building. And this is Waverley Building, which is still part of Nottingham Trent University today. We still teach art and design in there. And the black and white photo that you can see there, you can still approach this building through the same gates and the heritage bit there. I've just put the other picture in to show you that just behind those trees, there's been an addition, a more recent addition to that building to extend its scale. So what we have now and what we now call an archive, and here is full of, this Nottingham heritage of Nottingham machine-made lace, began its life as a teaching collection. And it began mainly because of William Felkin, who's a well-known manufacturer, scholar and campaigner for lace making. And he donated a set of pattern books to the school to support the teaching of lace design. And I should also say that the building, Waverley Building, was funded by lace manufacturers in the city, and the first governors of the art school came from the local lace industry. And I think just something else I want to say, actually, is a little bit of context. In 1905 was the height of lace manufacturing in Nottingham, and it employed about 25,000 people. And Nottingham's quite a small city, so that was a huge proportion of the city at that time, and there were hundreds of businesses. And now the context of lace manufacturing in Nottingham is probably people in the hundreds that are working in this industry, and there is one business, one manufacturing business left. There are some design studios, there are some wholesale studios, but there's only one manufacturer left in Nottingham now. So just wanted to give you that sense of scale and proportion. What the archive now contains is about 75,000 items, and we estimate, because there were pretty poor, if not non-existent records kept, that between about 1840 and about 1940 were when donations were made into the archive from the local industry. And we estimate that's 75,000 items. I've not counted them, but there is a lot, and they are portfolios, they are samples of lace, there are garments. There is a very wide variety, as well as quite a significant library of original books about lace design. There's also quite a large body of student work, and that's the work that I'm going to mainly sort of talk to you and focus on today. I wanted to put this in as well to show you that the art school was having some impact and being noticed around the globe quite quickly. And this is from 1867 Paris exhibition, where a medal was awarded to Nottingham School of Art for their services to lace design. So quite quickly, things had an impact of what was happening in the art school in Nottingham. So the schools of design, those 4 that opened in the 1840s, which were government schools of design, had to follow a national curriculum. And that national curriculum was very much focused around drawing. And there was drawing books that were allocated to the colleges, and this is an image from one of those drawing books. And that sort of initially created quite a lot of tension between the lace industry, who wanted designers, and the focus of the government was about improving taste and improving drawing. And I think the teachers and who were working in the studios with students at the time had to kind of battle those tensions, had to battle the criticisms from the industry, and had to appease the funders who were the government as well as the industry. So I think there was quite a lot of tension. And the press coverage that we've looked at from the Nottingham local papers has kind of made it quite clear that there's quite a lot of suspicion, and the industry were kind of very critical of the art school and talking about it as it just being merely a drawing academy and not producing designers. And this is at odds with what I've just shown you, the medal that was awarded from Paris to Nottingham. So these tensions were are very kind of apparent when you look at this history. And I suppose the dilemma for Nottingham and the School of Art at the time was about trying to think about general art and design education and specialist skill training, and about where they fitted in between those two things. So, sort of about 60 years after the school opened, 1913, the national syllabus that the government had insisted on being used began to be relaxed. And that made it easier for the schools to respond to the needs of the local industry. Some of the things that they were then able to do was to bring in Lever's lace machines, and this is one, to offer a more kind of technical perspective on lace design and the art and design experience that the students were having. And so the teaching was able to kind of talk about the principles of design as well as the techniques of lace drafting, so that they could understand the whole process of how to make a piece of lace. And then when we're looking at the press after this period, we start to note that there's a much more positive set of feedback coming back from the industry, and there is kind of press comments coming through about praising the teaching in the school, and saying that it's starting to meet the industry standards. So you start to see, you know, a much better relationship between the school and the students who are coming out of it in the industry. And it's at this time that through looking at student work, we begin to notice that there's a specific pedagogy for lace design emerging. And by the sort of 1930s, we can see that the principal of the college at the time is being much more confident in the things that he's saying about the school and about the appropriateness of the curriculum and how it's meeting the staple needs of the industry in Nottingham. So from at least as early as 1911, lace students in Nottingham were studying for around 4 years, often part-time, while also in work. And we start to see that they were learning to copy. And I think that story, the kind of copying story, when I told you about the invention of the Lever's lace machine, which was very much on imitation and about copying handmade lace techniques, we can see that theme runs through the art school in this early period, where they're learning to copy from antiques, they're learning to draw from memory, and that's the focus, where they're trying to understand the sort of canon of ornament, and they're doing that on a kind of a global scale. They're looking at books and publications that are articulating and showing and describing textiles and ornamental art from all across the world, and that is being fed into their approach to lace design. So the archive has 2 substantial collections of student drawings. We've got an examination portfolio and a design portfolio, and that tells us quite a lot about what those students were learning. So we've got an examination portfolio from 1917 from a student called Lawrence Jarvis, and he arrived at the school in 1915 at the age of 14, and this is some of his examination work, where we can see, I hope you can see actually the sort of some of the detail where he's drawing and painting using floral forms and using lace techniques to kind of articulate what these may look like in a lace design. And then we've got another design portfolio from Charles Lawson, and he came into the school in 1907, also at the age of 14, and he started winning awards, and we've got a huge portfolio of his work. But I've got a couple of pages that I'd like to show you of his. So Charles Lawson's work is the piece in the centre. The images either side of that are from Owen Jones' The Grammar of Ornament, and that was produced in 1856, and it was a publication which the government teaching insisted was used. So this had obviously been used from 1856. It was still being used in 1907 and later. So this was a really significant document publication for the students to be looking at. And what we can see is that there is direct copying going on, where this student is painting examples from Egyptian art, Egyptian drawings and stylizations of florals and of pattern. And we've spent some time going through, again, a page here of Charles Lawson's pencil drawing this time rather than painting, and a Persian style page from The Grammar of Ornament, where, you know, the student is being required to draw exactly what he's seeing, but to be handling different media. So previously, previously paint and this time pencil. We have about 130 pages of Charles Lawson's portfolio. So it was clearly, we assume, because nobody wrote down in 1911, we assumed they kept Charles Lawson's portfolio because it was an exemplary example. And it is a very beautiful portfolio. So what we can see is in his portfolio, we can see him drawing Egyptian, medieval, Renaissance, Celtic, Roman, Hindu, Chinese work, all coming out of the grammar of ornament. This was clearly something that the students kind of almost had to learn by rote. They had to just sit down and copy these things so that they had this canon of skills, this canon of awareness of global ornamental styles. They were also, and is evident in Lawson's portfolio, historic laces and lots of drawings of historic styles with labels naming them. So the students were learning then how to apply this canon of styles. They were then drawing designs using these styles to move forward. And we can see that in this example, again from Charles Lawson's portfolio. So we can see on the left-hand side where he's looking again at those Egyptian drawings that he was looking at previously. And then at the bottom in the middle, there's some tulip drawings here. And we found the reference to these tulip drawings came from an encyclopedia. So he was beginning to use different sources, drawing them himself, and then on the right-hand side, coming up with imagery of his own lace designs. So this kind of synergy between these different styles, different ideas that were coming in for him to interpret and stylize into lace. What I suppose we do now with our students is much more we ask them to draw from life and we ask them to go through their own process. And we found very little drawing from life in the student work that we have in the archive. But we do have a page of Charles Lawson where he appears to be drawing flowers himself from nature. And then obviously we can see him doing stylization and again interpreting this floral as a lace design. So something else that we have, which is now a little bit later, and we're now 100 years from the art school opening and 100 years from the art school teaching lace design. The Price collection was a collection that was put together in 1943, and it was funded by the Price family, who owned a large lace manufacturers in the city. It was made and put together with donations from 39 different lace makers, and there are 172 different items in the portfolios that are in there. And then all the drafts are annotated with descriptions, and the annotation has been done by the lace tutor at the time, who was Walter Mycroft. So what we think, and there is a little bit more information about this that was documented at the time, so that we can see that documentation is in news clippings mainly, but we can see there was some kind of panel who sat around with all of these samples that had come from industry. And I think quite similar to the previous talk, actually, there was a process of thinking, well, what are the best examples that we need to show here? And Walter Mycroft, the tutor, sat there with them, and they tried to come up with the strongest pieces, the things that they could really push the students with. You know, the sort of the merits and the demerits of the particular designs. So these pieces look like this. It's mainly focused around the drafting process. So lace designers learnt how to design. They learnt how to do all of the drawing that I've just described. They were copying, but they weren't really getting involved in the drafting process in any sort of depth. And I think there was a recognition at this point that actually the technical process could improve the design. So understanding how you could push the parameters of the technicalities meant that designers were more in control of the whole process. So what we're looking at here is, on the left-hand side is a draft, and that is an interpretation of the design, and it's a technical drawing, essentially. On the right-hand side, we can see a gridded page of numbers of a kind of a numerate description of how the loom needed to be set up to produce this piece of lace. And you can see the small sample of lace, which I've just made a little bit bigger so you can see a little bit more of the detail of it. So it's trying to tell a story about how this piece of lace is made. And then the section where I've got the orange line, there is some text that Walter Mycroft wrote, and this was for the students to take note of. And I'll just read this to you. So Walter Mycroft wrote about this piece. The pattern was selected for inclusion as it has two beams known as Key Elliott beams. They are a perfect imitation of the beams in real laces. It is a wonderful piece of draftsmanship and must be studied by the advanced student. Every bar must be working perfectly. Study the set out by copying them off, starting with the front bar, and then I'm afraid I don't know what that word is, which is why there's a question mark, and each turn the back bar. 2, in the pattern, the bunch of 8 Cloonies is very good and is a perfect example of setting out. So the tutor went through this 179 examples, and there are written comments on every one about how the student should look at this and what they can learn from it and how they can try this out themselves. With this one, and I'm just showing you the lace rather than the draft. Most beautifully drafted pattern with a number of fancy grounds and spaces filled with graduated spots on split leg work. This is a pattern to study. So you can feel the enthusiasm come through from Walter Mycroft. And, you know, that relationship between design and the technicalities was really appearing to become an important part of the teaching pedagogy of that period. Again, another couple of examples of things that were written. Study this composition carefully, for on this principle it is possible to make a varied assortment of wide goods. And another one, this is a good type of lightweight lace. The effect has not been explored to a very great length. With board-on cord liners, the effect would be good. To experiment with floss gimps, some good shading effects could be obtained. So again, technicalities about how you can use those technicalities to improve design. So some other kind of examples that are around the sort of 1940s and 1950s is 2 books that we have where samples of student work has been stuck into the book. And they start in about 1927 and they end, the last piece appears to be 1961. We don't know why those pieces were stuck in. Nobody wrote that at the front of the book, but we assume, again, that these were exemplary examples of what the students were doing, and the tutors wanted to keep hold of them to show the next year's students who came in. So there are some drafts and there's some sheets where the tutors are marking them. So they're marking the designs and they're marking the drafts. The drafts were then being sent off to have jacquards made and then come back into the school to be made on the school's levers lace machines. And we've got some examples here. These samples are really tiny. They're only about an inch wide. They're very small pieces. And this student, Ruby Potter, so this is from one page out of a book where there's a number of students working in a similar style. So these designs are actually by 2 students. The top one is Ruby Potter's. The bottom one is somebody called Joan Cox. And they are working on the same sort of exercise, but there are some subtle differences between the design. So we kind of assuming that they were asked, there was an exercise there where they were asked to produce something using this filet style of lace as a starting point. Another example we've got here from a student called G. Beasley, and this is 1954. So the piece of lace that's on the blue background is the piece that the student produced. And the piece in the corner is an existing piece of design from a company in Nottingham. So he's actually adapted and focused on how he could improve this design. We've got some examples here from another student called Newsome in 1946, where you can see the top piece is 1946, the bottom piece is from 1947. 1946, he seems to be trying out different styles, different sort of weights and effects, and then he's putting that into a little bit more practice in 1947 with the piece that's at the bottom. And there's kind of a more sophisticated response to design. And again, this is Newsome a little bit later in 1947, where we've got quite a novel design here where he's looking at waves. We don't know whether he was copying this or adapting or developing something that already existed, or whether this was his own original design. So essentially, I suppose the kind of the pedagogy that we see being developed over this kind of 150-year period that I'm talking about here is that pedagogy was concerned with the students gaining an understanding of the principles of design, that they were developing techniques for designing for complex industrial processes. They were learning the drafting, they were producing the jacquards, they were seeing what happened when those jacquards came back. But they were also understanding what the business of designing commodities was, designing commodities for a mass market, and that it was a very global mass market at that time. And the pedagogy was trying to meet the needs of the national education agenda, to develop taste, but also the practices of the lace industry. And there's a quote that I've got here about, this focus on adaptation of designs. Rather than entrusting design to a designer, manufacturers were often selecting an existing lace design and expected that it had sold well, and expecting the designers to adapt it and develop it. And as we've just seen, that's what some of those students were doing. They were adapting and developing existing things. The students were learning by copying. The agenda supported copying, it supported adapting. They were copying the canon of ornamentation that I talked about at the beginning. They were copying lace drafts so that they could understand and practice the complex drafting process. And students copied, always in a slightly adapted form, lace in contemporary production, learning to design variations of both common and uncommon kinds of lace. So the focus on the educational process was about copying and adaptation. This is just the beginning, really. This has been a very recent research project that I've done in the last year with my two colleagues from Nottingham. And we really want to do some more work to really understand how the teaching of art and design in a specific context of lace design in the university that I'm from, what other impact we can see and find from what we have in our archive. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug and say that I produced a book with a colleague from Nottingham called Deborah Dean, who looks after a lace collection in the city, at the museum in the city, because we ran a series of events called Lace Here Now in 2013. And there are articles there about our archive, about the history of Nottingham lace, about how our students use the archive today. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Since time is short, we can just take 2 or 3 questions. So I would request you also to let us know who you're directing your question to. Yes.
Hello, my name is Tulika, and my question
There are a number of reasons. So if we think about 1905 being the height of the industry, and the First World War started in 1914. 1914 to 18, a lot of the workforce went to war and a lot of people died. So the workforce was diminished. The 1920s then led to huge changes in fashion for women in particular. And Nottingham focused particularly on fashion lace. Interior lace moved up to Scotland and into the border area around Kilmarnock. So fashion was hit very hard. So there was quite a quick, by the 1930s, things were had diminished to a reasonable extent. Then there was the depression of the 30s, and you can see in our archive we have some very interesting novel attempts to revive lace and how lace might be used in the 30s. We have design records, that are quite intriguing around that. And then we're into the Second World War. So I think there's kind of a lot of economic, social conditions that really changed lace and what was happening. And I think the other thing that this project has actually revealed to us through going back and looking at press cuttings is that actually Nottingham lace came a bit of a dirty word. It became a bit cheap, and there wasn't the investment by the industry in design. The investment in the industry, as I've described, was about adaptation and copying. And the French continue to innovate in design in lace terms, and so they have still maintained that really kind of high level manufacturing of laces. So I think there's a kind of a combination of economic and social changes that led to that. But really, it was the late 1980s, early 1990s when suddenly it just kind of got wiped out. And again, that was economic issues that sort of finished off the last sort of handful of businesses. The last business that remains is called Clooney Lace, and they produce lace for high-end fashion retailers. So, Burberry, that sort of level. When our latest Princess Kate married Prince William, her dress had some lace on from Clooney, but it wasn't the most significant bit. The bits that were very evident, that were around her neck, was French lace. But she had some Clooney lace on the back of her dress, and the bridesmaid had some Clooney lace on. So, just as an example, really, of still how Nottingham lace might be viewed.
Okay. I think for all of us, this is a very notable case study of what copying and adaptation can do, because it shows us over a period of 100, 150 years what can happen to crafts. Yes, sir.
Democratization of the craft and then social impact. I think it's a very, very interesting.
Yes, Anna Louise.
Hi, thank you all of you for your presentations. My question is actually for Anand and Robin. It's about the role of museums in relationship to artisans themselves. I can see, Robin, you've done some really thorough and extremely useful work with the artisans, connecting the museum pieces and artisans' practice today. How about, what is, and obviously, the museums here in Delhi are well-established and really substantial museums. What about more, you mentioned, the initial startup of the design education in the UK was looking at provincial museums as well. So provincial museums here in India, how do artisans interact with museums, perhaps as a way of learning, but as a way of, understanding their own, the history and cultural significance of what they're doing? Because many artisans will be continuing a practice but might not know
as I was mentioning about the calligraphy exhibition, so apart from the exhibition, we did the 2 workshops, and where we invited the calligraphers. So one was the wood calligrapher, the stone calligrapher, and the textile weaver from the Kashmir, who has demonstrated the weaving of the calligraphy, Zannat-e Kashmir kind of a phrases he has woven. So, and it was a very successful workshop. Initially, we thought for a school students, so but with the very good feedback from the first workshop, the people came up, no, we should be allowed to attend this workshop. So for the second workshop, we let it open. So from housewives to faculty, the teachers, everybody, around 30 people, they interacted with the artisan. So it was a wonderful experience. And so far, not only the National Museum, but this calligraphy exhibition, we have worked with the printer also. We have invited them. So we have summer workshops. So in the school programs, we do some kind of a little workshop for 2 or 3 days. Right now, we are conducting a ceramic workshop for weekends. So like that, museum are also changing their role. So not only the National Museum, if you go to the Prince of Wales Museum, Bombay, if you go to the Calcutta Indian Museum, so they are also coming up with a different kind of ideas, workshop where the artisans are invited with the museum premises, and there is a direct dialogue with the artists as well as the curators.
Yeah, even this was very limiting when I studied. In my field study, this was my, one of the limiting factors that was reducing the quality of products. They were not having any access to traditional designs. So that is very limiting. So, and it is, we cannot persuade them to go to museums. So that is why I've come up with this design catalog. It's like a book. Probably we can have small catalogs or something, as a researcher, I could, give hard copies of such drawings to them so that something is there in their hand. If they want to draw on their own and if they want to work on their own, they are independent. They should not be dependent on, the middlemen, or probably we can say the master craftsmen who are, having access to these museums. But the embroiderer or the untrained embroiderer who is having nothing in his hand can have, such books or some records, certain, documentation that could help. So that is why when I did my intervention, I made it clear that I provided them with the stitch directory. What all stitches I have identified, I had given them in form of catalog, and they actually did it on their own, and they made a frame, small samples of different stitches that can be used for future record. Similarly for dyeing, I had given them that catalog, Hindi mein, the recipes were given in Hindi, the local language that they are using, so that they can always refer to it. And this design catalog, the hard copies were distributed to all the craftsmen, those who have attended these workshops. And many such other, like for product development. I think that's it. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Sorry, may I just take a question?
Just wanted to know whether these teachings of these techniques are also translated into what is contemporary field.
Yes, sir, very true. As I've shown some of my latest designs, I'm carrying it with me also. We have attempted with many new designs, like we are transforming woven designs, we are looking for new designs and new inspirations that can be worked on. And very recently, in fact, as I keep on looking at traditional old specimen, I come up with new ideas. There are huge, we can say, there are number of textures that were, that were seen in old specimen. And now I'm focusing, I've pinpointed all of them, and I am trying my best to transform in new designs. So my latest coverlets are something towards that direction. I'm working slowly, but yes, I am working towards that. Earlier we have done the replication, but now I am working on my design adaptations and design interventions.
We'll be able to carry on discussions over lunch, which has now been served. So we will meet back here at exactly 2 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you all very much.